Welcome to the We're Not Blowing Hot Air podcast, powered by Oxygen Plus. This season, we're zoned in on mental wellness as we explore some of life's biggest, most important questions with fascinating guests. Get ready for a colorful, curious exploration of this thing called life with today's remarkable guest. James A. Garfield, the 20th President of the United States, said, "The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable." And he would know. Prior to fighting corruption within the government, Garfield served as a major general in the Union Army during the American Civil War. Perhaps you too have experienced grief, sorrow, or unhappiness because truth turned up her volume. I certainly have. It's hard to hear. I let down a friend. It sucked to walk in on a cheating partner. And I bet it was pretty crappy for 16th century Nicholas Copernicus and 17th century Galileo Galilei to suffer such resistance and condemnation for their heliocentric beliefs from religious, academic, and political authorities that the suppression spanned for 4 centuries. Yeah, the truth can hurt, be hidden for ages, and upset the status quo. But the truth, like the sun, always shines her light. And whatever misery may come, I want to pursue truth. Here's to going after it. Thankfully, I'm not alone in the hunt for truth. Ryan McBeth exposes lies about things that matter. A true patriot, he served more than 2 decades in the Army with 2 overseas deployments as an anti-armor and heavy weapons infantryman. He also works for a company that develops life-saving drones for military combat, among other things. He's an author, a content creator, and he has amazing information on his YouTube and Substack channel. I suggest you subscribe. You also might have caught him on NEWSMAX, where he serves as an intelligence consultant, lending his expertise on various national security matters. I found Ryan sipping whiskey and puffing a cigar on the Danny Jones podcast, where I immediately saw the true gift he is to our world. Let's welcome the entertaining and intelligent Ryan McBeth as we explore life's fundamental question: how can we know truth? Ryan, thank you for being with us today to talk about truth. Why are you so excited to be on the show?
I'm really excited that I get a chance to talk to you. I took a look at a number of your podcasts, and I'm like, wow, this really is a person I want to talk to. It's not just that shade of lipstick. I am really impressed with what you've done with this podcast over the past couple of years. And I appreciate you allowing me to have a drink and a little smoky treat while I do it.
A little smoky treat. I love that. Well, I'm on board with, I have some bullet bourbon. I didn't have any Scotch whiskey in my closet here at work, but cheers to you for being here. I'm very excited and honored to have you on We're Not Blowing Hot Air. I became a fan as soon as I really saw you on your first video and watched more, understood kind of who you are as a person, and really like how your history and your interest fuel your present moment and what you do today. And I was just very engaged with it and very impressed and just really honored and excited to have you here. So thank you.
The pleasure is all mine. I am so happy to talk to your audience about how to find the truth, or weapons or equipment, or really anything you want to go with.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a bit scary out there. I'm not a huge fan of social media because I think I would rather be outside in nature or with friends. I know that you have put a lot of your energy and attention into sharing your message through social media. And I'm just curious, like what really got you going there?
With social media?
Yeah.
So I am an overnight success that took 5 years. Right? What got me going was that I interviewed a guy. I was a software engineer. I was working for Accenture. I interviewed this guy, and this guy, he knew the answers to the questions, but he just couldn't articulate them. Right? Why does a person become a software engineer? Well, because I like computers more than people. Right? So how do we interview a software engineer? We put them in front of people. Whose idea was this? So I was interviewing this guy, and the guy wasn't doing well, and they blackballed him, right? They wouldn't hire the guy. So I said, I'm going to start a YouTube channel where I teach software engineers who have very few social skills how to get a job. And I'm like the James Bond of software engineers, right? So I'm very outgoing, very gregarious, right? I started doing YouTube videos, and I did that for about 3 years, and my channel was about 500 or 5,000 people roughly, and I would do programming videos, get a couple of views, people liked it. And then one day the war in Ukraine kicked off, and I did 2 videos. One on why Russian tank turrets pop off of their hulls when they're hit, and another on why Ukraine hadn't been the subject of any cyber attacks. And all of a sudden, I went from 5,000 followers to 100,000 subscribers overnight. And I guess kind of what I realized is that programming is good, and I still do some programming videos on occasion, like the Bitcoin video I showed you. But I think what I'm pretty good at is kind of getting technical information about how weapon systems work, how disinformation works, how cybersecurity works, getting that across to laymen. And then that layman can listen to me, and then they can go to a party and then go, hey, you know why Russian tank turrets pop off their hulls? I mean, look, I'm not exactly a great, I'm not Ronald Reagan, great communicator, but I'm good enough to quote at a party. And that's plenty for me. I'm happy that I was able to make somebody else happy and smarter.
Well, I think that's awesome. I would also venture to guess that it has to do with your sort of who you are in terms of an army man,
Yeah.
your history, your love for the country.
Yeah, I spent 20 years as an infantryman, Army side. I did 2 overseas deployments, a couple of other deployments as well inside the country. And I joined the Army to kind of get out of poverty. I grew up poor Irish family, Lindenwold, New Jersey. My dad, he managed a warehouse, or eventually managed a warehouse. And I wanted to go to college and study computer science. Well, my dad wanted me to be a carpenter. Well, can't get money from your father, get it from your uncle, right? And it's the Army and this country have given me so many opportunities to be successful, and I've taken advantage of those opportunities. And I guess this is a way of giving back. I do love this country. I think we live in this absolutely amazing place. And if I can make it a little bit better by teaching people how to spot Russian disinformation, we're challenging disinformation agents. Well, darn it, I'm going to do that.
I love it. Well, we're here today to talk about truth and what it is. I've heard you say before that truth has more of a structure or like a ceiling, and lies don't have as much like conformity to it. What do you think? How can we look at truth for the purpose of this conversation as we explore how we can know it better?
Well, that's a good question. That's a really deep question. I like to think I'm not that much of a deep thinker, but I can tell you that
I'm going to call you out on that. I think you're a very deep thinker. I don't think you want the accountability, perhaps.
Maybe. So I think part of it is if you're trying to look for truth, I guess kind of the question you need to answer is, are you looking for emotional truth? Are you looking for truthiness? That's something that Stephen Colbert called it, truthiness. Emotional truth is kind of another way of saying it. And I honestly don't know if I made that up or not. I know Stephen Colbert made up truthiness. I may or may not have made up emotional truth. But if you want to believe something so badly that you're willing to overlook that the facts don't support something, that thing you're supporting might not be true.
Right.
Now, in some cases that's fine. Like I might say, hey, the Washington Wizards are the best team ever, best basketball team ever. Well, categorically, that's not true. But I'm a fan, right? So of course I'm going to root for the Washington Wizards. So that's kind of an emotional truth right there, right? But for other things, like is Israel dropping cans of meat on Gaza that explode when they're opened? There's an element of emotional truth there, and you have to stop and think. Even if you absolutely hate Israel and everything Israel stands for, and you 100% believe that Israel would drop booby-trapped cans of meat onto Gaza, which is something they were accused of doing, you have to stop and say, what they really do? What tactical benefit do you get from doing that? And I think since so many people are so far removed from the military, they have no real concept of how the military actually works or why they do different things. So it's very easy to kind of slide into that emotional truth if you really don't know how things work outside of your own expertise.
Emotions can inform our worldview for sure. I think factual data, there's a lot of different, even beyond science, there's a lot of ways to find what may be truth. When we think about what is true, can we agree that for the purpose of how we're going to talk about disinformation and how propaganda is used in our culture today, can we say that truth has to do with what some objective fact is? Is there a way we can look at truth where we can say it's beyond emotions, it's beyond personal preference, this is something that we can verify? And my next question is what are some ways we can verify that?
So I think you can by verification and experimentation. Those would kind of be two things. Now you're not going to go out and experiment with weapons or explosives, right? But it might help to do some kind of thought exercise. And that might be like, let's say, so the tins of meat in Gaza thing. Um, Israeli soldiers use a landmine called an M15 landmine, and they use these landmines to detonate tunnels. So the landmine is essentially a portable explosive. In the packaging of the landmine, there are these fuses, and a fuse is a little thing that you put inside the landmine well to get it to explode when you step on it. But if you don't want the landmine to explode when you step on it, you just want to use it as an explosive to collapse a tunnel. You don't put the fuse in. Instead, you take the fuse, you throw it on the ground, you put something called detonation cord, inside that fuse well. You daisy chain them, and then you detonate them. Now, that fuse box would be thrown on the ground, and the Israelis kind of left them there, and that's how. And since if you turn them over, there's a little key on them, like a little tuna can key. That's how people thought, oh, these are cans of food, or at least that's how they thought they could trick people into thinking they're cans of food. So even if objectively you're looking at a can that looks like a food can, the next thing you have to say is, what does Israel gain by killing people randomly who are hungry? Like, what does it increase their tactical situation? Does it allow them to complete military objectives? So when looking for the truth, you gotta pause. Put any feelings and emotions you have on pause, and you go, okay, how would someone actually do this, and what do they have to gain? Now, for the case of these tins of meat that were exploding, that actually were fuses, in a case like that, you kind of look at that and you go like, well, does Israel gain a tactical position? Do they get any closer to defeating Hamas by hurting innocent people who picked up a can on the side of the road? Not really. For the most part, and innocent people have been hurt, for the most part, those people were adjacent to a target. And that, unfortunately, that's what we call NCV, non-combatant cutoff value, where you have to say, like, all right, and this, believe it or not, is a thing in the military where you go, okay, there's a number. And this number, the NCV, the non-combatant cutoff value, is the highest number of civilians we can kill in order to destroy a target. And that is a very strange calculus.
Yeah,
So,
business.
all right, well,
I mean, business has that too. Like the FDA has it for a drug. Like how
that
dangerous
is
it can
fascinating. I want to ask you more
be.
about
Well,
that.
I don't know everything about that. I'm not in pharmaceuticals, but I know that there's a certain level of toxicity or lethality that all of the pharma drugs really, I mean, that can be dangerous. There's a certain level of it that is
I buy that.
toxic. And yeah.
I think I once heard that if aspirin were invented today, it would not be legal. No, I wasn't aspirin. It was Tylenol. If
Okay.
Tylenol were invented today,
Wow.
they'd be like, "Oh my God, you can't have this stuff on the shelves. It'll kill people." So yeah, apparently,
Scary.
like Tylenol is like, I think, what was it called, Rise syndrome or something like that? Like you can't give. Yeah, there's like, I might be pronouncing that wrong,
Well, there's
but
definitely some skeletons in the closet, I think, around that.
yeah,
But so you're saying CC emotion, try to
yeah,
think logically, and look at
yeah,
in this context, a geopolitical or some sort of strategy perspective or lens to see, is what I'm looking at
yeah.
really even like does it make sense? Does it have some
Yeah.
validity?
And you might emotionally want something to make sense. Like I know that you heard me on the Danny Jones podcast. So one of the things that made a lot of people mad was when I said there's no such thing as a military-industrial complex. Oh my goodness, people lost their minds when I said that. But if you look at where things are today versus where they were in 1990 versus where they were in the 1950s, Eisenhower gave a speech. I believe it was his farewell address in 1961, where he warned America of what he called the military-industrial complex, which are these military companies that were kind of influencing government policy. And that might have been the case back in the 1950s. But by 1990, what did we get? BRAC, Base Realignment and Closure Commission. So we're closing bases left and right because it was after the first Gulf War. Russia was defeated. We're like, what do we do with this big army? Shut it down. So we started shutting down bases. We started drawing down equipment. We bought less equipment. And now we're down to basically 2 shipbuilders. There's only 2 companies that actually build military ships and 5 total defense contractors in aerospace. So what we had back in even the 1990s isn't really there anymore. And when you look at something like the profit of Lockheed Martin, which I believe was $6.7 billion, whereas Apple makes $97 billion a year. Well, what business do you want to be in? You want to be in the business of selling phones or weapon systems? But the military industrial complex, it's so ingrained in our consciousness that we have a very hard time letting go of that.
Is it outdated? Has it shifted into something more maybe cyber?
I mean, I think that one of the differences is what was it called, NCAA or NRAA, the National Readiness. I can't remember the darn acronym. One of the things that we do have is lobbyists from some of the defense contractors do help write some of our policy when it comes to things like parity. Like we must have 11 aircraft carriers. We must maintain a certain kind of dominance with China or parity with China on jet fighters or whatever. But when you look at that, you go like, well, who would be better to answer that question other than the people who work for the freaking company, right? There's a reason why you have pharmaceutical sales reps. Like, yeah, they're there to peddle drugs, but they're also there to educate the doctor. Like, hey, you take this thing once a day, it'll prevent your patients from spontaneous decapitation, right? Which I hear is really bad. Like Hexagon. If you take Hexagon once a day, you'll prevent spontaneous decapitation. Like side effects may include your limbs falling off. But you kind of get the idea there, right? Like it might not be a bad idea to have experts. And if you don't think experts are good at what they do, hopefully you never need an expert witness at a court trial, right? Sometimes there's a reason why you have experts. So I would say another thing would be to avoid that entrenched thinking. Like, am I thinking this way because that's what I've always thought? I've always thought there's a military-industrial complex, so that means there is one now, even if Lockheed Martin only makes 6 points.
Why was that?
6.7 billion
Why
a
was
year.
that an issue for people that there isn't one or anymore? It's not as big.
When you challenge people's assumptions about the way the world works, you better get ready for a rough ride.
Yeah.
Look, it was Isaac Newton, Galileo. Galileo stand in front of the Catholic Church. The Catholic, he was there because he had the gall to say, "No, man, the Earth moves around the sun."
You're not going to believe this, but that literally is in my intro that I just recorded for this podcast. I mentioned 17th century Galileo Galilei. And it was 4 centuries until Pope Pius, I think.
Yeah, sorry about that.
In 1992 is when he finally said, okay, all of the previous criticism we now accept.
Well, yeah, there is.
About the sun being the center. Yeah. Crazy.
So that one interesting thing when it comes to truth can be a moving target, especially if the way what you see as the truth works for certain situations. For example, Newtonian physics. Okay, Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton's the freaking man. People were accurately predicting when the sun was going to come up with Newtonian physics, and they were doing it for 200 years. But as we get closer to the speed of light, Newtonian physics doesn't work anymore. Now, does that mean Newtonian physics was wrong? Well, it doesn't mean it was wrong. It was right for those particular applications, but then we discovered new information. So if you're kind of clinging to old truth, hey, if you go outside in the rain, you'll catch a cold. All right, well, maybe back in the 17th century or something, they had no antibiotics, or the houses were more naturally damp because of lack of insulation. So if you did go outside, you couldn't dry off fast enough. Now you can just throw our clothes in the dryer. Or maybe you didn't have as many clothes to wear, so you might not change out of your wet clothes and you would catch a cold. I don't know. But truth can kind of shift. And if you kind of stay in the mindset of, well, this is the truth because it's always been the truth, or it's been the truth as long as I've known it, that's kind of dangerous as well.
I love that. And I think that actually, let that be our working definition for this topic today as we discuss how can I know truth? Because maybe it's an ongoing knowing, an ongoing relationship, like you and I getting to know each other. It starts here and then it gets bigger and larger, and it can change too. So that's exciting. Okay, great. So now that we have that for our listeners and for ourselves, I'd like to go into, you've talked about a couple of things like IDC, the process for analyzing facts, looking at like probability and likelihood.
Yeah.
I think that's...
ICD-203.
Okay, I think that's really interesting. And then DIP, deceptive imagery persuasion, which is a form of propaganda that uses, you take an image or one would take an image and put false text over it. It's particularly used in social media, I'm sure, right? Yeah. And then you have tools that you've mentioned in some of your videos, Ryan, which again, I'll just say are not only informative, but freaking funny. You use Cyabra, you use Google reverse image searches, social threat intelligence, all these things. Yeah. What are your tools in your toolbox when you see something online that you like use to deconstruct and say, hey, this isn't going on?
So I think probably one of the biggest toolbox is all the books behind me. These are just a small fraction of the books I have. And I actually have quite a few books in my Kindle as well. So probably one of the biggest tools is that, well, shoot, I'm the tool, because this is literally my life. This is all I do. I have a couple of hobbies. I like to run. I like to ride bikes. But I work about 13 to 16 hours a day. And even when I'm going running, I'm reading or I'm listening to a nonfiction book. So, the step one in your defense in depth, in your defense against misinformation, is to be informed yourself. And that means read as much as possible, learn as much as possible about the entire world. Everything from, I have The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn right here.
One of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah.
I have a book on Eros and Pompeii. Right? I think it's just two random books that I pulled off the shelf, right?
Yeah, and by the way, I just wanted to share too that Ryan has been, not only has he done a video on some of his favorite books, but also he gave We're Not Blowing Hot Air an exclusive list of his top favorite books that I'll share later on with our subscribers. So thank you for that, Ryan. But okay, right. So inform yourself.
That's
your brain.
That's your base.
Your brain.
Your base is to actually look, to read as much as you can and know as much as you can. That's your base, right? That's your foundation. And then for me, one of the tools that I use is Google reverse image search. And Google reverse image search allows you to take an image and figure out the provenance of that image. Where did this image come from? So you might take a look at this image and see all the possible instances where this image was posted, or even similar images. So that's one useful tool. Now, Cyabra is a paid tool, I think this normally costs about $12,000 a month. I actually don't pay for it. Cyabra gives it to me for free. I just have to mention them when I use a tool. And Cyabra is constantly scanning social media, and it uses some secret sauce to determine whether accounts are real or fake. And there's certain software tricks they have up their sleeve to figure out whether accounts are real accounts or inauthentic accounts. And that is very useful when taking a look at people on social media who are spreading misinformation. So those are kind of like 3 layers of defenses there, and the average person, they have access to 2. Read as much as you can and use Google reverse image search if you're ever looking at an image that could be deceptive imagery persuasion. Which, by the way, talking about deceptive imagery persuasion, if you'd like me to do that.
Please, yes.
The idea behind deceptive imagery persuasion is that you take a truthful picture and you put misleading text on it. And one example I always give is there's this famous Facebook post of a woman who said, "This is Betty White in her 20s." Now, I don't know if you show graphics during your show, but I can send you this image. But Betty White in her 20s, this gorgeous woman. She's kind of like, a 1930s pinup model looking thing. But it's not Betty White. But you want to believe it's Betty White, right? Because who doesn't like Betty White?
Yeah, real jerks wouldn't like Betty White.
That's an easy sell. And there's not a lot of there's not a lot of problems that you can encounter if you are wrong that isn't Betty White, right? Like the amount of proof that you have to do increases based on the level of the threat. If you came to me and said, "Ryan, someone parked in your parking space," I'm probably not going to ask you for proof. I'm probably going to take your word for that, right? But if you say, "Ryan, hey, 2 knights are jousting outside," I'm going to want to see some proof about that.
Yeah.
Right? So kind of the level of claim, the severity of the claim, you need stronger and stronger proof to prove that claim is true.
Did a thumb?
I would say
a thumb just come up in front of your screen? By the way.
Oh my goodness! I'm sorry. So I can't figure out how to turn that off. I have a Macintosh.
I just wanted to see if it was deceptive imagery. That I was like,
no, it's not deceptive imagery. That for some reason I can't figure out how to turn
that off. Is it when you do the thumb ups that they do the thumbs up?
Yeah, if I do thumb up like that, I think that sometimes my Mac will add a thumbs up on the screen. I think if I do this or that, it like confetti rains down or balloons come up, something like that.
Makes it rain.
I can't. I've owned a Macintosh for probably about 9 months now. I'm still figuring this thing out.
I think they call it a Mac now, since.
Yeah, you know what? That shows you how old I am, right? Because I grew up when they're called, "Oh, I have a Macintosh."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I can render a 4K video that's 20 minutes long in about 8 minutes with this thing, and it would have taken me at least 30 minutes on my old PC.
Yeah. Well, you've bridged, now you're on the creative side. You need a Mac for that kind of stuff.
If worse comes to worse, I use remote desktop. I remote into my PC. In fact, when I did a recent video, I wrote some software to kind of prove that social media could actually shut down deceptive imagery like that.
How mad does that make you that they haven't?
We could actually stop or severely hamper disinformation on channels like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram in about 2 sprints. And a sprint is like a development cycle. So normally that's a 2-week sprint, 2-week development cycle. We could probably shut it down in about 2 weeks. And you would use something called vector maps.
I want to say that again. So in 2 weeks, we could shut down on all social media channels in the US, all disinformation and deceptive imagery.
I would say most disinformation, we could make it severely hard for it to spread. We could do that in a couple of ways. And 2 weeks, I say 2 sprints. A sprint in software development, agile development, is considered 2 weeks. Usually, sometimes it's 3. But so maybe in about a month, maybe 6 weeks, if the deadline slips, we could probably implement something that could that would, when you upload an image, it would take a look at that image. It would see how similar that image is to other images that were uploaded, and it could create that data provenance for that image, where you could say, "Hey, this image was actually uploaded back in 2016." there was a famous picture of an Israeli girl writing on an artillery shell, a 155 artillery shell. And people were passing this image around saying, look at how horrible the Israelis are. They are writing messages to children in Gaza on this artillery shell. And I said, they might be writing messages, but that image is actually from 2006. And the only reason I could do that is that I remembered it in my brain. But how easy would it be for a piece of software? It would be trivial. It would be trivial for a piece of software to take that image that you just uploaded, vectorize it, and a vector map is sort of like a description of the picture, but in mathematics. And take that vector map and see how similar it is to thousands of other pictures, millions of other pictures. You could do that in seconds. That's trivial.
Yeah.
It would take longer to upload the picture than I think it would to actually compare it with other pictures. So we could shut it down very quickly like that. That's one way of doing it, just by having data provenance and saying, hey, this person is claiming this thing happened recently. It actually happened in 2006. So that's number one. Another thing we could do is we could create a cooldown time for things like how often you share something, or how often you like something, but how often you share something. That's kind of the big thing. So maybe you only get 3 shares an hour, right? Now, if you want to share something, you better really like this thing, and that will kind of help prevent some disinformation from spreading. People will really want to have to use that share. So, I think that freedom of speech is definitely a good thing, and it's something that the government should not infringe upon. Now, private companies, they can take certain steps into certain things into their own hands to say, okay, we're not saying you can't say this thing, but we are going to put a little blurb on the bottom of your speech saying what this person is saying is contradicted by this information that we have here.
Yep.
So, and that might kind of pump the brakes on disinformation, just kind of in general.
I love it. Yeah. Okay, well, I want to go back to social media, but first of all, I think it's important to know that, like, you've said in some of your videos, and again, I encourage all the listeners and viewers to go and watch them because they're funny and informative. You love a little bit of thrill and excitement, danger, challenge, being told that you can't, the pursuit of life and liberty. You've said you love keeping people alive. And of course, truth, helping people know the truth, finding the bad guys and exposing them. Kind of like, what do you have to say about that yourself out there as a public figure doing this stuff?
Boy, I've never really thought about that. I mean, I guess I guess kind of what drives me is that love of country. I'm just I'm so happy to be here, and I'm happy to be part of this amazing American experiment. Public figure, I think, kind of like as a public figure, I feel responsible to my fans or people that watch my stuff, even if they're not fans, to kind of give them good information, give them the best possible information, so that way they can make decisions. I still work today for an intelligence company called Veloxxity. I work part time. They're my way of retaining the security permissions that I have. So just do a little bit of work for them, and I can still stay on that list, right?
Yep. The security clearance. Is that
Yeah,
the list?
the security clearance. Not everybody knows what that is, though.
Okay,
But,
I don't really. I just like to say it and pretend like I do.
But I
mean, I want to be on the list. I do want to be on the list, but I'm probably not gonna be.
There's like a year-long wait for that.
Okay,
list, so
all right. I'm
apply
still waiting.
now,
I'm still
because
waiting to be on Rhea, if you know what that
It
is.
takes the investigators about a year to clear you.
All right. Cool.
I think that for a guy who served his country, which I kind of think is a weird thing to say sometimes, but for a guy who served his country, I also feel like I can continue to serve, and I can do that by finding the bad guys. Now, I used to write something called C4ISR software. C4ISR stands for Command Control Communications Computers Intelligence Surveillance Reconnaissance. So my software found bad guys. And once I found those bad guys, I'd give that information to my client. and then my client would either continue surveillance or they would perform more kinetic actions, to solve the problem. And nowadays, I use software tools to still find bad guys, sometimes kinetically, not here, but in other situations. But when I'm in this room here, I can use my software that I've either developed or I've bought or I've worked with other companies on to find the people who are trying to destroy our country through disinformation and exposing them for who they are. So I guess that's kind of what I'm all about. If I'm going to use my celebrity for something, it's going to be as the loudest voice in the room to call out the people who want to destroy America.
Well, I, for one, I'm grateful for it. I really, the main motive I had in reaching out to you was you really helped me with an issue that I have been like subtly but really quite strongly affected by since childhood. I was a bit of a worry wart as a kid. And, I would worry about my mom and dad coming back from a party, making sure they got home safe. And also I'd think a lot about nuclear war. And it like really worried me. I mean, I would cry at night. I would cry myself to sleep sometimes worrying about these things. And so I was watching another podcast and there was somebody who was giving a depiction of what nuclear fallout would look like and how it would, all of the bombs would go off and everyone would be melting off their flesh off their face. And I wanted to understand and read and all those things. So, but what you said, I'm going to read you here. Radiation isn't the boogeyman, and you can deal with it if you know how. You know that if you are outside of the blast and thermal zone, you stand a good chance of surviving if you keep your head about you and you take shelter. You also know how nuclear weapons are delivered and why they might be used and what for. And you know that EMP is really kind of an unknown factor in all of this. There's one thing I want to leave you with. It's this: don't be afraid of radiation, but have a healthy respect for radiation. If you keep in mind time, shielding, and distance, you'll have all the tools you need to deal with the threat. And that really freed me. Like that was a different video that you did, but you were talking about, what the truth is. And you took issue with, whenever you see something that you don't see as truth, Ryan, you call it out. That takes so much courage. And it's beyond your intelligence. It's beyond all those things. It's about it's a decision that most people, I think, admire you for, but most people don't make.
Yeah, I can tell you that I don't think anyone's pro-nuclear war, right? Like, let's have a freaking nuclear war. and I can tell you that if there was a genuine, honest-to-God, full exchange, there'd be a lot of problems. But in something like a limited exchange, which could theoretically happen, or if we're just talking about one nuclear weapon, if you're outside of the blast zone, outside of the thermal zone, if you're able to take shelter, there's a 7 to 10 rule that for every 7 hours, the level of radiation goes down 10%. I mean, radiation is radiation because it decays. When you have an unstable isotope.
I knew you were going to say isotope, by the way, because I watched your video.
If you have I know which book you're talking about. It's the book that scared the pants off of everybody.
Yep.
And you should have a healthy fear of this. This isn't something you want. However, by understanding the science behind things, you can kind of take control. And one of the issues I had with the particular book that I believe you're referencing was radiation wasn't explained. And I have to travel to I might have to travel to Michigan soon. But traveling to California, I think you get about 5 millirem of radiation. I'm trying to do that one from memory, and that's like one chest X-ray. So pilots, they get juiced up. Like if a pilot got the radiation dose that a nuclear power plant worker got, there would be investigations. Pilots get an enormous amount of radiation. It's because you're flying kind of above that protective blanket of oxygen, of the atmosphere that we have. So you're at 30,000 feet, you're a lot higher up. There isn't as much atmosphere protecting you from solar radiation. It's one of the issues we have flying to Mars. There's a lot of radiation out in space, right? Now, radiation is radiation because you have an isotope, you have an element that is unstable. It has too many neutrons. And so it tries to release these neutrons either in the form of helium, which is an alpha particle, or an electron, which is a beta particle, or gamma rays, which occur when they split, or the neutron kind of heads off on its own, which was what you get in a nuclear reaction. So radiation means that that isotope is trying to decay and reach a stable state. Now, I don't know if you've heard the term half-life, but you might have an element or an isotope like tritium, which has a half-life of 12.33 years. So if you ever have a tritium watch or a tritium sights on a gun, there's a reason why they're not as bright 12 years later as they were when you took it out of the box. The point of radiation is that radioactive isotopes decay.
Yeah.
And different isotopes decay at different rates. And if you kind of know, like, okay, after roughly a week, things are going to be down to safe levels. Don't splash in any puddles, but it'll be safe enough to go outside and do different things. If you kind of know that, then that kind of gives you a little more power. Right? And one of the fears I had when that particular book came out was that people were going to use that as an excuse to let Russia just walk all over Europe. Because, oh my God, what if Russia nukes whatever? And the next thing you have to say is, well, what does that even mean? What if Russia nukes? What does that mean? Is Russia going to detonate a city buster over Kyiv? What tactical benefit do they get from that? Are they going to blow up New York? What benefit do they get from that? They don't get any benefit from that. About the only time I could see a nuclear weapon used in Ukraine would be a smaller tactical nuclear weapon, which would be in the 1 to 10 kiloton range, like a small nuclear weapon. And some of the smaller weapons, you could detonate one at the end of an airfield, and it wouldn't even break the glass, at the other end of the airfield. And that's how small some of these weapons can be. But you might use a tactical nuclear weapon to explode over an enemy formation. So that is a thing you can do. The Russians actually practiced this, where they would, we practiced it ourselves in the 50s. We would detonate a nuclear weapon and then tell troops, okay, run through the blast area. And that blows a hole open through the enemy lines. And a second use case for a weapon in Ukraine would be if Ukraine manages to break through Russian lines, Russia could theoretically use a tactical nuclear weapon to stop their advance, probably an airdrop weapon. So but the odds of them doing that are very, very low. I've said before, nuclear weapons really aren't that useful today, because one of the reasons we used nuclear weapons in the past was that we didn't have smart weapons. And now if we want to drop a bridge, we can use a laser-guided bomb. Back in the 1950s, we weren't that precise. Just lob a nuclear weapon in the area of that bridge, and it'll take it out. But I'm glad that I was able to make you feel better.
No, legit. Like it was awesome. And, it was all on that pursuit for truth and how we can grow and look at things and really understand our world better. So it was amazing. I think I would like to go into what our real, what the weapons are today that are being used. But first, I think it's somewhat important to, as thoughtfully as we can, talk about who is our enemy. Who do we really need to be afraid of now today? Sitting here, I'm in Minnesota, you are somewhere on the East Coast. What's my threat? What's your threat? What do we need to consider, if not worry about?
Boy, that's a really deep. I've never been asked that question before. That's a really deep question. So the general strategic threats would be in order of issue: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Those are the four basic strategic threats. I would say another strategic threat might be general climate change. And I'm not a climate guy. I'm not a super environmentalist, but the Army has already identified that climate change could create the kind of mass migrations and the kind of civil disturbances that could cause the American military to be deployed to different places. So if climate change means droughts in certain areas or energy scarcity, and that starts a war, the U.S. or the UN could be called in to, as peacekeepers to stop those sides from fighting. So that's kind of the fifth issue there. And I think one big issue is terrorism, and that threat, that specter of terrorism, hasn't really gone away.
And
And
are you putting that outside of the former enemies that you mentioned? Are you coupling that with
yeah, so the thing that actually kind of keeps me up at night, a couple of things keep me up at night. One of the things that kind of keeps me up at night is terrorism from Iranian proxies inside the United States.
And can we, just for the benefit of listeners, because I recently, really kind of understood what proxy wars are and how they're used by some of the major countries. Can you briefly explain what that is?
Absolutely. So, for the longest time, a country like Iran, they didn't have the money to build aircraft carriers. They didn't have the money to build huge nuclear missiles. But what they could do was they could pay a little bit of money to terrorist organizations or militias and have them develop a strategic footprint, or a footprint inside of a country, to destabilize that country and give Iran influence over that country. Lebanon is one example.
Kind of like pharmaceutical reps going in to talk to the doctors.
I mean, you could say that pharmaceutical. Yeah, the people who were selling OxyContin, they were trying to destabilize the industry, right?
Yeah.
So, and then ideally, then that doctor might talk to another doctor at his golf game and say, like, "Hey, did you see that pharmaceutical rep? Their drug helps prevent people's heads from popping off, right?"
No, but in other words, just leveraging the local boots on the ground and inciting, finding the alliance, how they're connected, and then giving the resources to execute a higher agenda.
Yeah. So these proxy organizations, in Iran's case, the Houthis, who are in Yemen, the Hamas is considered a proxy organization of Iran, even though technically they're Shia, they're a different religion, and so is Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon. So those are all people that are affiliated with Iran, but they're not Iranians, and they kind of do Iran's bidding. If Iran wants to destabilize a country like Lebanon, they might tell Hezbollah, "Okay, I want you to attack the parliament building this weekend." And we would just drop a bomb on it, right? But we have aircraft carriers and we have other resources. Iran doesn't have that. So I think one of the thing that kind of keeps me up at night is the idea that Iran could have proxy agents here living in the U.S. who are waiting to be activated to go do some kind of terrorist thing.
I mean, we've seen that. We've seen that happen.
It happened in Chechnya, at a school called Belsan. That wasn't Iran. That was the Chechens, I believe. But recently, Islamic State launched an attack in Moscow.
I just mean the fear. The fear isn't. The fear is grounded in some history. Your fear
is grounded in history. I don't want to say fear isn't. Oh, I'm scared of that. It is. There is a non-zero chance of something like that happening. And while I am in no way criticizing our president or our current border policy, with our borders the way they are, one of the issues is that we don't know who's coming in. And a lot of Chinese have been let in, have gone into the southern border with Mexico, and some Iranians as well. And that should kind of, in the intelligence community, this is what we call a clue. Right? And that doesn't mean we need to shut the border down and put people in cages and arrest and deport. So it means we need to do something. At least know who we have coming in. Because if I were Iran, that's how I would bring terrorist groups into the country. Just put them in through people who are being smuggled across the border by coyotes. And now you have cells living inside of America. I didn't want to eliminate your fear of nuclear war and give you a new one. But Yeah, look, if you're,
I'm not as scared
is the
because
mall,
I subscribe to your Substack and your
yeah,
your YouTube channel now, Ryan. So I know I'm gonna be able to see something coming now with a 5 minute
what,
or
what,
20-minute video.
I sincerely hope I never have to make a video like that. But I mean, you take a look at where you live in. You live in Minnesota, right?
Hmm.
In Minneapolis, there's the Mall of America, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's is that good? Is that, I don't know. You may have. I've never been to the Mall of America.
I won't
Not
say
that big.
anything. I don't want to like hamper our tourism here to the state. It's not where I would shop. Actually, maybe I'm a bit of a fatalist because I've heard that if like one tiny drop of anthrax was dropped, it would shut down the mall for like 70 years or something crazy like that. So like, I don't.
In a way, you gotta be careful with the hyperbole
Yeah,
of that.
exactly. Which is why you're my favorite now.
Yeah, like you said, one drop of anthrax could, like, well, we would detect it. Yeah, we'd have. Yeah, we have troops, and all of these troops do. I think it's 37 series. Might be wrong about there. 73 series, 73 series soldiers, 73 MOS series. They find and go after chemical weapons, and we have a number of National Guard units that I can't remember their name right now, but these National Guard units are active duty National Guard, and their whole job is to respond to nuclear, biological, chemical, and radiological disasters. I know one of my fans asked me, do a video about the dangers of a dirty bomb. I mean, the biggest danger of a freaking dirty bomb is to get hit by a piece of masonry when the bomb goes off. A dirty bomb is just a bomb, conventional bomb that's surrounded by radioactive isotopes. The thing blows up, and you don't have an atomic explosion. You have these radionucleotides that are kind of thrown everywhere. And yeah, if you breathe one in, you might have some problems. But for the most part, it's a weapon of terror, not really a weapon of mass destruction, right? And we know how to find and clean up these radioactive isotopes. How do we know that? Because what does radiation do?
Decays.
What do radioactive isotopes do? They emit radiation.
Oh,
So we find the particle that's emitting radiation, and we go, oh, okay, there's a particle of radiation there. We take a piece of tape, stick it on that. We survey the ground. Okay, that's clear. We survey the tape. Yep, it's on the tape. Put it in a biohazard bag, and we put it in storage for the next 10,000 years or however long it takes to decay. So, in a case like that, we have National Guard troops that know how to deal with radiological, biological, chemical, and nuclear threats.
well, I think going back to like, there are enemies out there in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on the macro, big geopolitical players. They're also the proxy players.
Mm-hmm.
I think one could argue it's also within our mind that we can control the level of threat that we, the information we take in, how we make sense of it, and how we live our lives. Like I'm not going to worry too much tonight about everything I'm learning today from you, but so I just want to make sure. So to finish your point, the proxy, some of those players, a bit of the explosions that might happen, if we can say that word. I don't, all the words that are taboo on YouTube.
Oh, on YouTube, yeah, that's good enough.
But yeah, any other thoughts on what your worries are today? Like as far as like what we're dealing with.
Cybersecurity is a big worry.
Okay, yes, I want to get to that. Yeah.
As I have a very dumb house, and I do that for a reason.
So like broadband, are you talking? Is that what? How dumb?
I don't. I do have one Alexa device, and that is kind of walled off a little bit of my network. And for the most part, that's because if I'm handling raw meat, I don't want to touch the timer on the microwave to do like 15 minutes or whatever. Alexa, set a timer for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't have any smart devices. I can't turn on my lights with my voice. I can't open my blinds with my iPhone. I have a very dumb house, and one of the vectors in for any kind of cyber attack would be all of the devices that we have on our network, because I can practically guarantee you that your voice activated coffee maker probably doesn't have the level of cybersecurity that you would expect.
So I'm just going to cut to it. Should we, the people listening to this, make our houses and our cars dumber? More dumb? I don't know. Not as
So
smart? Or do you need to?
that depends on your level of risk or your risk profile. I one of the things I talk pretty openly about it. I carry a gun. I'm not a gun nut. I'm not super into guns, but I carry a small pistol because I've been threatened before. So my level of what I believe, what my perceived risk is probably different than the average person who isn't quote unquote YouTube famous or hasn't pissed off Iranians and Russians and Chinese and incels on 4chan, right? I would say in general, if you can live your life without an internet connected washer dryer, then you should probably do that. But then you kind of have to weigh like, hey, it's nice to know when my clothes are done because I live in a big house and I don't get the alert that my dryer is finished. And then, I haven't folded the clothes yet. So if you can kind of give yourself a reason why this thing needs to be connected to the internet, then yeah, maybe the advantage of having that device is worth the trade-off.
Let me
Right.
ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No.
No, I was pretty much done.
Okay. So everyone needs a VPN. Yes or no?
So one of my sponsors is EIA VPN.
Plug it.
Yeah. So I would say that yes, with an asterisk. If you're traveling, and connecting up to the hotel Wi-Fi, it's you're not having sex without a condom. You're having sex with somebody else's condom. Like it is the most disgusting
really
thing
gross.
you can possibly do. Connect to a hotel network.
Okay. What about the airport? Same thing. Any public
Same
network?
thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Any public network, you need a VPN.
Okay.
Just in general, it probably isn't a bad idea to have a VPN, virtual private network. So a VPN, virtual private network, it allows you to mask your location by using another computer. So you tunnel to that other computer, and it looks like to the whole internet that you're coming out of that computer. Now, by the way, companies can actually detect whether you're on a VPN because the frame size is a little bit smaller. And they go, okay, so this package was wrapped in something else before. And it's a little bit slower, but if you travel, then I don't even use airplane Wi-Fi without a VPN. That's going straight up to a satellite. I don't know who manages that satellite. But I would say that it wouldn't be a bad idea when you travel, or if you want just that extra layer of security, especially if you I guess one example is let's say something like Netflix. Right now Netflix gets really angry at you if you're suddenly outside of a location. So if I travel down to a friend's house or something like that in a different state, I want to be able to watch my Netflix. I might use a VPN to make it look like I'm still in Maryland, right? And that way the Netflix doesn't go, oh, hey, hold up, where are you? How come you're over here? So that would be another use case.
Are all
The
VPNs
average
the
person
same?
probably.
By the way,
What's that?
Are all VPNs the same? Would you say? Because I know a couple like Splash Top or whatever it's called is owned by another one, and I use a different one.
So not all VPNs are the same. One of the things you kind of have to watch out for is know who owns your VPN, what country that VPN is based in, because like if you have, let's say, a VPN that is owned by China, like that's now your data is going directly to China.
Can we just say, do you want to plug your VPN then? So I trust that one.
Well, my VPN is PIA VPN. You can go to PIA/McBeth to get 83% off for this month only. So
really? Okay, awesome. All right. I use Molded, by the way. Tell me later if that's a good one or right now.
Look, if let's say you were operating an intelligence agency, wouldn't it be a great idea to start a VPN?
Brilliant.
hey, use Spooky VPN. Spooky VPN gives you the top speeds, right? And hey, give it away for $1 a month. Spooky VPN for $1 a month,
What's
and now
frustrating to
you can
me
watch people.
What's frustrating to me
Yeah.
is some government, like the U.S. government, in some cases are shutting down some VPN. Like, because I have VPN, I can't go to certain sites.
Oh, certain government sites?
No,
Well, they can
Like,
detect.
I mean, I don't know if maybe we should edit this part out, but crypto stuff.
Mhm.
The government's
Okay.
really kind of against VPN, I think, in general, the U.S. government, because they want to see data. They want to see what's going on with that stuff. And in that community,
Right.
it's a challenge.
In the crypto community?
Yeah.
I'm actually not aware of that. I know a little bit about crypto. I did send you that video.
The most amazing video, by the way. We have to keep this
My
part.
crypto site.
Yeah, like everyone, Ryan does this really smart, like spec script of a Seinfeld episode where he explains how a blockchain is actually made from a very, very geeky way, like with the nodes and all the. It was really awesome though. So it
Did
has
you watch all 3 episodes of that, or
yes, of
just,
course. I had some
okay.
more laugh out loud moments. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it is really,
You know what was
really well
weird?
done.
Well, yeah, when
He
I
dresses
was
as a
holding
woman. I mean, you're a woman. You're Elaine.
I'm actually so I happen to know my old boss. He told me that he believes the Russians actually assigned someone to me. So I have a handler. I have a minder who kind of watches what I do on the internet.
Hey, what's up, Vlad?
But I'm actually really surprised they haven't found that yet. Me dressed like Elaine. Right?
It's so good.
I'm surprised about that, but
when you said it, when you said in your email it wasn't that popular yet, I'm like, you just gotta, you just gotta re-blast it out to all your followers, because
it's I think one of the issues that most people wouldn't get it, but at least the software programming side. But was kind of interesting was as I was writing the script for that particular video, I was like, wow, this would actually if Seinfeld were going on today, Kramer would be mining crypto.
100%.
Like, without a doubt, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's money for nothing.
Yeah.
It's just gold, Jerry. Right? Like that's I could tell in my head. I was like watching this and going like, I would watch this.
It was comic gold. Like it was great. No training, everybody. I don't know if I like you more as a comedian or an intelligence expert, like telling the truth and shaming the devil on social media.
It's funny. I've never been called a comedian before.
Oh my
that's
God.
interesting.
All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe ask your fans if they think you're funny or more helpful. See.
Yeah, I think some of the humor came from the fact that what can Russia say about it? So sometimes when I do videos, I'm wearing a bathrobe, and I look like hell, and my shirt has cigarette stains in it, my hair is messed up. And the reason I started doing videos like that was, number one, it was usually early in the morning because I was working for Accenture. So like I literally like rolled out of bed and just made a video, right? Because something happened last night. Oh, there was Ukraine got a new weapon system. I'm going to make a video about it. And kind of what I realized is that if I look like I'm a crazy person, what can Russia say? If I'm wearing a suit and tie and I'm trying to be very stiff and respectful and sound very serious, like take me seriously, if I do that, then Russia can go, oh, this guy is a CIA shill. But if I look like I just stumbled out of the basement, and like my walls are covered with red lines with string, right, and pictures and JFK and all that stuff. If I look like that guy, and I'm giving good intelligence, what can Russia say about me, right?
Yeah. The word disarming comes to mind. It's very disarming. Yeah.
In some ways that's a character. And I don't take myself too seriously.
Anymore.
Like, yeah. There are times when I know when to be serious. Like when I did my video where I analyzed footage from the October 7th attacks, not wearing a bathroom, right? Like right now, I know how to be professional. I'm
You
professional
did
right
that?
now.
You did really? I didn't see any
Yeah.
of those videos.
So I had to make 2 versions, one for YouTube, which by some miracle of God got monetized by YouTube. I had to blot everything out, but by some miracle of God, it got monetized. But on my Substack, I show everything uncensored, and it's pretty graphic, And I'm not showing these pictures because it's like I want to show dead people. Instead, I'm saying, all right, these Palestinian guys are posing with this dead body right here. You can see by the patch on their left shoulder that they're in the 5th Brigade. So that's kind of like I'll
Yeah.
show all sorts of death on my Substack, um, and but there's a reason behind it. Someone asked me to review a video that was like greatest hits, which is just Russian dudes just getting blown up by FPV drones. I'm like, there's nothing of value here. You're just showing people get killed.
Yeah,
And
go play a video game if you want to do that.
yeah, if if you start to think it's fun, you need to seek psychological help, because there's nothing about this that's good. I feel sorry for every Russian soldier that has to get blown up. You know what? That sucks. It's war. One of the videos that I made, I guess about 2 years ago, when I found out the TOW missile, which is a missile that I used to shoot in the Army, it's an anti-tank missile. When I found out the TOW missile was being sent to Ukraine, I made a video and I made it Creative Commons, and I begged Russians to surrender. Call this number up here. Call the surrender hotline, because you're going to burn to death inside your tanks. This missile I knew a lot about the capabilities of this weapon system that we were giving to Ukraine. And I felt sorry for those Russian kids who may not have wanted to be there and are going to suffer the consequences of a madman. And I begged these kids to surrender. So I can find the humanity in that. So if I'm just seeing a bunch of videos where Russians are getting blown up, not a lot there. But if they're getting blown up and their arm flies off and there's a patch on their arm that says, oh, they're in the 75th Motor Rifle Regiment, that's intelligence. That's interesting to me. But the other stuff, like, I'm not too into the whole death porn kind of thing.
Yeah, you're more into life, clearly. I think by the way you choose to live your life. I so we've discussed a little bit about the enemy, who it is, and some of the kind of more modern warfare, which I think you said cybersecurity or cyber tactics, social media. TikTok, you said, is a weapons system. You said it is a weapon.
TikTok.
Oh, go ahead. No, you tell it. You're better than your quote. You're right here.
Yeah, TikTok is a weapon system. If in the olden days, if you wanted to destroy a bridge, say, when you buy a drill, do you buy a drill because you want a drill or because you want a hole? It's because you want a hole, right? So if you destroy a bridge, are you destroying a bridge because you want to destroy a bridge, or by destroying that bridge, you can prevent the enemy from advancing across it, or you're preventing resupply, you're causing general economic distress, which degrades the enemy, right? So in the olden days, if you wanted to destroy a bridge, you had to send a bomb, you had to send a missile to destroy that bridge. Now, why are you destroying the bridge? You're destroying the bridge to deny the ability of people to cross that bridge, right? Which could hinder enemy movements. It could degrade your capability to resupply. So now with TikTok, you could send students who you brainwashed to shut down that bridge. Now the bridge is still there, and you haven't destroyed anything. You have plausible deniability for sending a weapon. But when you send a bunch of students to shut down the Golden Gate Bridge, you're a weapon system. What you've done is you've created economic disruption. One of the things I've actually advocated for is to consider enemy disinformation agents combatants, which means they can be kinetically targeted. So if you are getting paid money to spread disinformation from the comfort of an office in whatever country you're in, we can put a hellfire through your window. Now, one of the things I've said is, I can send you this graphic. For years, we've considered land warfare for 100,000 years. As long as humans have had stones and sticks, we've been fighting on land. And then, like by the Peloponnesian War, we're fighting on the oceans. And then by World War I, we're fighting in the air. So we've already established that there's 3 domains of warfare, and anybody fighting in those domains are lawful targets, right? Soldier with a gun, he's a lawful target. A sailor on a ship, he's a lawful target. A person in a plane, a pilot in a plane, that's a lawful target. So cyber is a domain of warfare now. And you could also say information is a domain of warfare, and that information domain weaves its way through the other domains of warfare. So
Can you
how are those
explain?
people
Can you
not
explain
targeted?
just how is cyber different in your vernacular versus information? Information war versus cyber
So,
war. What's
so cyber warfare is designed to just degrade or disrupt enemy computer systems,
okay?
adversary computer systems. So I might launch a cyber attack that shuts down a computer system or destroys a hard drive or whatever.
Okay,
Whereas information warfare means that I am targeting your brain.
messaging.
I am trying to get you to believe something and lead you toward a guided conclusion to degrade our adversary.
Might I say?
It
Might I
might,
dare say what's happening right now in Palestine? The pseudo
yeah,
protests. Okay.
yeah. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that I'll say whoever is doing this. I can't prove exactly that there is a single agency that is directing students to protest in certain places. A lot of this stuff is done on seems like it's done on a case by case basis. But I know that one example is the wildfires in Hawaii. After the wildfires in Hawaii, uh, the wildfires just so happened to coincide with an American congressional trip to Ukraine. And one of the narratives that was put out by Russia was, we're giving $700 checks to people in Hawaii, but we're giving X amount of $1 billion to Ukraine. And that wasn't true. Now, it was true that we were giving $700 gift cards to people, because when someone has lost their entire home, they go to FEMA. FEMA says, okay, here's a $700 gift card. Come back tomorrow. This $700 allows you to buy some clothes, get some sundries, get a hotel for the night. Come back the next day. We'll get you the aid you actually need. Fill out the paperwork. But somehow the narrative became $700. We're only given $700. And that is an information war designed to degrade America's faith in their government. I'm going to Australia in a couple of months, in July. I'm going to give a conference at the 2014 Emergency Services Conference in the Gold Coast in Australia. So spending $9,000 to give a speech for 20 minutes, right? I get my name in a paper, like on a research
Worth
paper.
it.
So
Nice.
worth it, totally worth it. So one of the things that Australia is afraid of is China. If there's ever wildfires in Australia, Chinese disinformation agents might put out information saying, go south, that's where the shelters are. So people go south and they run straight into a fire and they all burn to death. Why did the government say that the shelters were in the south, right? And all you have to do is create a Twitter handle that's similar to the government Twitter handle and get people to retweet what you're saying. Yeah, you might have it could be like the New South Wales Emergency Services, at New South Wales Emergency Services might be the Twitter handle, right? So that if you're China and you want to cause disruption in Australia, just copy the logo from that and then call yourself China New South Wales Emergency Services _. And then you start putting out information with hashtags that say Outback Fire or whatever, right? And now you have people retweeting information like, well, the emergency services said go here. And now you have people running straight into a fire. And now people are upset with the government because the government told them to go south instead of north where the safety was. So that's information war. That's another component of information war.
Okay. So
consequences.
and the best place for a lie to hide is within a truth, right? So it's always probably going to sneak its way into camouflage itself and and live in there. But like, so when you think of those situations and people, the heat is turned up, whether it be a fire that suddenly ascends upon a nation and a people, or a threat of a new type of weapon or warfare that's coming down on a people, or it's a political assembly, a demonstration that people have an emotional urgency to go to. We can learn. We can learn to pause and think. Okay, does it align? Is this a rational way of thinking about what the truth is? Or we can turn off the social channel that we're listening to, or find a different social media channel or person. Like, I guess it's what I'm asking you is, how is the best way we don't have you all the time on every video, every day of the week to tell us when a new threat hits our nation. Like, we don't have someone like you to kind of guide us. How do we create our own inner guide to make sense of an incoming threat? I'll give you one more fun example from my life. I was in Hawaii when there was a missile that they said was coming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that must have scared the hell out of you.
I work constantly. And I finally went on a vacation I was with my mom in a beautiful hotel on the beach. It was like, I was working the first 3 days. We finally took a yoga class on like near the beach. Someone comes running down the first time just finally saw the sun. And they're like, a missile's heading our way. Everyone go to the ballroom. And so we went to the ballroom, which wasn't going to help us. And we were all gathered there, and it turned out to be a false alarm, right? But like, I had no idea my mom wanted to go to the hotel room to get her wallet so she could have her body identified. It was like, there was no plan. There was no way for us to be prepared. The hotel wasn't ready, So like, what, like in a real heated moment, like, how, because we are living in that world. We are living in that world where it may not be nuclear war now that like melts our faces off, but it's some stuff. It's something on a bridge. It's something that happens in front of the Israeli embassy. It's something that happens that evokes emotion or urgency. And like, I think the big question is, do we completely shut down things like TikTok from our life? Or do we, or like parts of Twitter? Or like, how do we really not be led without cutting out information, without cutting out news in a way? Like, what do you think is the solution?
It's a very good question. I don't think you need to cut TikTok out of your life if you're using it for certain kinds of entertainment. I don't necessarily agree with TikTok. I do believe it's a weapon system. But if watching funny dance videos or cat videos on TikTok gives you joy, then maybe allow yourself to watch those cat videos. But when the cat starts talking about how Russia's going to win a war against Ukraine, then maybe you shouldn't listen to that, particular video. So that would be one thing. The other thing would be to know what your sources are. So when it comes to things like breaking news, there are some channels that are better than others. If you have a reputable news organization, meaning a news organization that you pay for, that might be a better source than something where you're getting your information for free. Eurasian Times, I believe, is oh my god, it's a horrible website that's full of fake news. But the fact is that if you're not paying for something, the product is you, right? So I pay for three newspapers. I pay for the New York Times, I pay for the Wall Street Journal, and I pay for Haaretz, which I only started paying for after the October 7th attacks, because they had the best graphics on like casualty figures. So if you're getting your news for free, that should be kind of a warning sign, because typically organizations that you pay for have armies of fact checkers. They have experienced reporters who know how to question things. That would be a good starting point. Are you getting your news from something that you pay for, right?
Okay.
So that would be step one. I think now there's also an issue with that too, because when did Israel lose the information war? They lost it on October 17th. And that was when the Al Arabiya hospital, there was an explosion at the Al Arabiya hospital, and the New York Times said Israel dropped a bomb on it without even really checking first. I did a whole video about that. Another thing you might be able to do is just kind of go through ICD 203, which is the Intelligence Community Directive 203, which has a matrix in it. And that matrix kind of says, all right, let's look at the probability of this thing being true. Just kind of use your reasoning. In the case of the LRB hospital, you have to look at your reasoning and go, okay, what is the likelihood that Israel would drop a bomb on a hospital? Well, if Daddy El Badi was in that hospital and Israel really wanted to get Daddy El Badi, yeah, they might drop a bomb on that hospital. They might have it go in through a specific window. It might be a smaller weapon, but they might do that. So that's not out of the question. Is it possible that a bomb dropped from an Israeli plane might have gone off course at the hospital? Yeah, that's a possibility. But then you go to the other side and go, all right, what if it was an accidental? What if it was a deliberate attack by Hamas? Well, every weapon you fire at yourselves is one less weapon you can use against the Israelis. So that probably isn't possible. But could it be a Hamas weapon that failed? As it turned out, it was an Islamic, Islamic Jihad weapon that fell short of its target. And when you look at how 20 to 30% of rockets launched from Gaza fail and fall in their own territory, in the intelligence community, this is what we call a clue. And maybe, now the New York Times didn't go through that process. They didn't go through that intelligence process. They looked at all the possible possibilities and put it into a matrix. So in some ways, I guess there might not be any hope because if the New York Times get it wrong, what are the chances you get it wrong?
I'm not speaking for my country, but I think there is a feeling of not knowing we can trust, even like the news sources we might pay for, or the popular ones we think are mostly doing their research or somewhat impartial. I think that's the overall fear, and that's why people, I think, one of the reasons people love you, but you're doing all that work for people, Ryan. I mean, you're having to, that's a lot of responsibility. Like, why can't we be more empowered to have this critical thinking level of analysis and that's probably not possible. We all have a day job.
You have to go to work.
Right.
You got to go to work. You
Exactly.
got to work it. This is me between 13 and 16 hours a day. I love consulting. I love traveling because when I travel someplace, I get to not be at the computer. I can actually read a book or something like that. Although I might be reading a book about weapon systems or the latest report on Iran's rockets, right? But at least I'm not, feeding. We call it feeding the beast. YouTube is this cookie monster, and you have to keep feeding it content, right? Keep feeding the beast. And so when I'm home, I'm feeding the beast, right?
Well, I will say I'm not ending this podcast unless you have to. You still have a cigar going. Just number 2, I noticed.
I can get
Are you
going.
still good? We might have to make this 2-part podcast, but it'd be amazing if I think you're still doing a service. That's what I was trying to say. When in all of the effort that goes into creating your YouTube videos, your Substack videos. Interestingly, you've pointed this out before. You're not on TikTok.
No.
You have many false aliases that try to be you. I think that's amazing. Yeah. So no one follow him on TikTok. You won't be getting the real Ryan McBeth. So we were going to talk a little bit more about TikTok, how that's a weapon. You're okay with businesses using it. You're okay with people using it for enjoyment. You just think that they're stealing. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth out. Are they taking all of our information? What are they going to do with it? Who cares if they know my preferences or what I like to watch? Is that really? That's not so much a threat, but it's how they're going to brainwash us. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that not so much. Here's what I can say. The TikTok China was sucking down information. And in fact, there was a situation in TikTok corporate. A couple of people got fired over this, where TikTok thought there was a leak, and so they looked at the TikTok locations of journalists, not to serve them ads, but to see if any of their employees had been in the same area as journalists. And that's something they can do, right? Because
Okay.
if you have TikTok on your phone, TikTok knows your location. And if a
Even if I
journalist
turn
has
it off, even if I say location services off, it's
if you turn off location services, you might be okay. But if you're connected to Wi-Fi, that data is still getting out.
still okay.
And because Wi-Fi locations are a way to geolocate you. It's how I geolocated a doctor who claimed he had gone to Gaza. And I was like, oh, yeah, your phone never left the U.S. Right? I figured that out. And what's scary is I bought that data. That was trivial. I just bought that data, and I bought the advertising data for the phones that were in Northern Virginia, because I was suspecting this doctor who claimed he had gone to Gaza and saw all of these atrocities. I just bought all this data, and I just filtered the data until I found a phone that was pinging from these 3 offices that the doctor owned. And then I was like, this phone never pinged at IAD. It never pinged at Dulles, which is a major international airport. It never pinged at Newark, which is a major international airport. Something tells me you're not telling the truth here. So, yeah, even if you turn location services off, you're connected to Wi-Fi, that could be an issue. Your phone actually isn't listening to you. That's one thing people think. Like, oh, I was talking with my wife about going to Italy, and then I went to the bathroom, and on my phone there were these ads for Italy. Well, it's because as soon as you got up to go to the bathroom, your wife Googled trips to Italy. And since her phone is associated with your phone and they're both coming off the same Wi-Fi node, it knows the two of you live in the same house. The microphone is not on listening to you all the time. That would drain the battery like that.
Mythbuster. I love it. Okay.
Yeah. I actually kind of so yeah, you had mentioned one of the dangers of TikTok. So let's say that one kind of scary thing. Supposedly China, or supposedly TikTok, divested all of their servers and placed them in at Oracle in Texas. They actually called it Project Texas. And so if you want to get technical, TikTok US is firewalled off in Texas. And the TikTok version that they have in China is on ByteDance service in China. It's actually called something else in China, and I can't remember the darn name for it right now because it was Daofang or I have to do a video with Jordan Harbinger. Douyin is the name of the service in China. But like Douyin is heavily restricted. Douyin, like if you're under 14, I think you can only be on TikTok for like 20 minutes a day or an hour a day, something like that. It only shows like science experiments and like famous Chinese astronauts and patriotic videos.
Neat. Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that. But whereas in the US, like, hey, let's make the US dumber. But even if TikTok servers are technically split off from the ByteDance servers, China still owns a seat. They own a golden share. And if you're an executive sitting in your offices in the US and something comes down from corporate saying like, hey, I need you to get me the profile information on the location of all of these users, all of these journalists that are in the US. I need to know where all these journalists were the past couple of weeks. Are you going to say no to that? I don't think so. Right? Like, your bosses in China said, "Hey, I want you to give me this information." I can tell you, the weakest man in the world is a 55-year-old white male who is an IT professional, because I guarantee you, he has 2 kids in college, and he is not going to be able to get another well-paying job if he gets fired. So, what are the odds that this guy is going to do whatever the heck people at corporate in China tell him to do? I would say it's probably pretty close to 100%, right? Because if he gets fired, he's not getting another nice, cushy job as a director of IT for a major corporation, right? He's too old. Ageism is a thing.
Yeah.
So, if what I can see is if China wanted to grab information, location information, for something like elicitation. let's say I'm China and I want to know about the F-35. All right. Well, one of the things I might do is I might create an account on a message board that's mainly used by Lockheed Martin employees, or it's maybe a message board that's about the aerospace industry. And I'm going to call my account Engineer Girl with 3 R's. And then I'm going to put a AI generate a picture of a cute girl in her early 20s with a couple of strands of purple hair. And then I'm going to post a message saying, hey guys, I'm a student doing a paper on the radar reflective properties of the F-35. Can anybody help me out with this paper? I just need some specifics on whatever. Now, most people are not going to give out secret information, but there's always that one dude who sees Engineer Girl and thinks, well, I'm going to help this young lady with her career. You know, guy's in his 40s, he's got a little weight on him. He's never going to talk to a girl that looks like that in real life. Why not help her out? That's elicitation.
Okay.
So whenever it's funny, she just appeared in a video of mine. I had this Russian dissident reporter who works in Lithuania. She reached out to me because I've done work for her news station a couple of times. And she reached out to me. She's like, hey, Ryan, I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. Do you want to meet for dinner? And I was like, I called a bunch of other Russian journalists that I know. So number one, I called my boss. And I was like, hey, by the way, someone who's Lithuanian, who's a Russian dissident who works at an opposition Russian radio station or TV station just called me and asked me to dinner. Because that's like anybody who's in the intelligence community, that should set off alarm bells. An attractive woman just asked me to dinner, and she's from another country. This is how elicitation starts. And then I actually called around to a bunch of other Russian journalists I know. I'm like, do you know this woman? They're like, yeah, she's fine. And we had a nice dinner at a Georgian restaurant. She just wanted to show me like what Georgian cuisine is like.
That's fun. Sounds great.
I think originally from Georgia, not Russia, but then she went to Russia and then went to Lithuania. But so elicitation is where someone tries to kind of get to know you, and it is our natural desire to be polite,
to be helpful.
to be helpful. Yeah, like, hey,
right.
can you tell me where the 7-Eleven is? Oh yeah, go down the street and turn right. Right. Hey, can you tell me what the radar reflective properties of the F-35 is? Yeah, it looks like a suitcase. Like that.
Playing on our goodwill, right? And
Yeah,
that I mean, sociopaths do that, right? Like manipulative people do that.
Timeshare people, right? When you go to a timeshare presentation, why do they give you free food and free show tickets, right? Oh, well, they did all these nice things for me. Maybe I should buy their timeshare, right? So, let's say TikTok wanted to elicit me. They had a Chinese spy that was like, I want to get Ryan McBeth to tell me some secrets.
Do you know how you could get got? Do you know how they?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you how you can get me. I'm going to tell you how you can get me.
All right.
So what I would do if I were China was I would hire somebody to bump into me. So it's probably not going to work with a 20-year-old, right? She needs to be a really attractive 40-year-old woman who is into triathlon and biking, right?
Okay.
So China knows that I'm going to different races, or because of location services is on my phone, they know that I ride this route every Saturday, by my house. I do 20 miles on my bike or 30 miles on my bike. I ride this route. So they can see that because the location services tell me that. They can hire somebody to come and ride a bike and have their bike break down. Of course, I'm going to stop and help because every cyclist does, right?
So is this surveillance, reconnaissance, and SRI?
Yeah, that would be a reconnaissance. That would be a type of reconnaissance, right? And hey, you want to go to dinner? Yeah, I'll go to dinner with you. And China's just figured out where I am, how they can send someone to me. One of the funny things that I'm really not into.
But how would they get you? I mean, you wouldn't. So you meet her, you bump into her. What are they? How do they get you?
Yeah, a relationship starts, right? And then,
okay, all right.
like, oh, yeah. What do you? So why do you have to go to Tampa so often? Oh, what's in Tampa, right?
Yeah.
MacDill Air Force Base is in Tampa. What's on MacDill Air Force Base? SOCOM. Oh, so what's it like working in a SCIF, this secure compartmentalized information facility? Now, at this point, I might be getting a little suspicious.
Because you've been trained to know, right? Like you're
Right?
trained. Yeah.
All right, why are you asking about the skiff? But so not everybody might be as suspicious as me. So if you have TikTok on your phone and China knows your location and they think you might want to get the information from you, then that might be an interesting way of doing it. And again, what IT manager is going to say no to that? Nobody. Now you might say like, well, I don't do anything. I don't have to worry about TikTok coming after me. I don't have to worry about China coming after me. I just like to watch cat videos. All right. Well, you like to watch cat videos, but you are a man who is also sexually interested in men. Let's say you're married to a woman, you have some curiosity about other men, you watch some TikTok videos about homosexuality, maybe you've talked with other men about sexual topics using the chat feature on TikTok or direct messaging or whatever. Now China has that information. And then 10 years from now, you decide to run for office. So
it's collection. It's collection of data right now.
Data collection.
Yeah.
When it comes to handling human intelligence, there's a term called MICE, which means money, ideology, MIC. C is coercion, and E is ego. Right. So when that would be coercion, right? Like we're going to coerce you into kind of working for us or following our policies because we know all this information about all the weird sexual stuff you were talking to other men on TikTok. Wouldn't your wife hate it if she found out about that, right? So that would be one method of convincing someone to maybe do some things that are not in America's best interest, and that's something that's not going to happen on Instagram. An Instagram executive is not going to go after a guy, a future politician. Although I guess theoretically that could happen because in some cases Twitter was shutting down the opinions of some people who were going against the current administration.
And it could be hacked, right? Like you said, even Bitcoin 51%.
Yeah, if 51% of the servers all agree, then it doesn't matter what you say. You can change change the whole blockchain. So yeah, that's what's kind of scary to me about TikTok. The fact that not only do they have all your personal data, but you might say, well, the servers are on the other side of the Great Firewall of China. But in reality, all it takes is one weak 55-year-old IT professional, and you're sunk. You're done.
So I think for me, Ryan, it kind of goes back to like what we know to be true. We may not know the whole truth about what's going on in Israel or Iran or South Korea, whatever is going to happen next, Taiwan, even in our own backyard, with our own family. But we can know what we know is true about ourselves and hold on to that truth. And I think, you've mentioned on your videos Caroline Bueno. Is that right?
Caroline Bueno. I probably pronounced her name wrong. But she's amazing. She's better than me.
Yeah, she is better than you.
She is. When it comes to misinformation, I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Like you wheel me out, and whenever a new rocket launches, and I say, well, this satellite can see beyond the stars, right? Like that's my thing. I give you like this surface level information. Caroline Bueno, she can dig really deep into things. She's very good at what she does. I'm just famous. That's it. People like I'm the drunk uncle that people wish to come to Thanksgiving dinner.
You play your role, and it's awesome. But I just want to point out something she said that you actually brought up. You referenced her. And I think a lot of us, like, we jump to a conclusion, maybe because of emotion, but also because, like, it's like that short circuit. We kind of, we want to close a gap on how we think about something. She said, when you can't tell what is real, many people respond on giving up an objective reality and instead choose to make judgments about what is true based on what they want to be true. To win the battle of a narrative. So it's either like a cognitive dissonance jumping to that conclusion, or it's because they feel like they have to have an answer. When I looked at that video you shared about the college student who was crying because she saw Hasidic Jews, and like, it's about like coming back to yourself. Like, what is it inside yourself that feels so broken that you feel like you need to have some sort of outside answer from a political stance that's going on? I think you said it before, like, if you really are that upset or something about, go see a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
The season of We're Not Blowing Hot Air is about mental health. So being able to think about issues, having critical reasoning without being pulled into this haze of emotion, I think is so important. And I feel like I hope that message can get out somehow, because a lot of people want to no. Even me, I go there, but like, really, like, can't we just like try to breathe and calm a little bit? Because what ultimately really can we control?
Well, you can. So when someone spits on you, does it make you mad? Someone spit on you, would it make you mad?
Yeah.
No, it makes you wet. You make yourself mad. Right? So that's what
Yeah.
you can control. You
There
can
you
control
go.
how you react to things, right? So that is one thing you can control.
I was in Kenya in a market, and someone I was with was spit on, and they had to control it
Hmm.
because we were
That
Americans.
sounds like a fascinating. I want to hear
Yeah.
that story.
Well,
This
I
is your
mean,
podcast.
no,
Like,
I just, but that made me think of that exact thing. Like, you're right, because they couldn't be mad. It wasn't our country. We were Americans,
yeah.
It was a different time, but that's just hitting me, I guess. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can control ourselves. That's what you're saying. We can control our reaction.
That's the one thing you can control.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't really have anything else to say. I wanted to talk about a lot more things. Like, I wanted to know what you thought about people who think the moon landing isn't real.
Yeah, keep going. Screw it. Let's go.
Really? For
Yeah.
real? All right. Moon landing. I don't.
Moon landing.
There was this a guy that I was almost going to date, but then he told me he didn't believe in things like the world being round or spherical, oblique
Okay.
sphere, an oblique sphere to be factual, or that like maybe the moon landing wasn't real. And I couldn't go on. I couldn't go any further than that.
So
how do we think about issues like that?
So that's just kind of interesting. There are some things you kind of have to trust science. I don't even want to say trust the science, because when you use the definite article, that kind of implies that there's my science and your science, and my science is different than your science. There's just science. Science is constantly changing, right? I've written about nuclear weapons. I've written about nuclear bombs. I have never once touched a piece of uranium or plutonium. You can own uranium. You can buy uranium. I've never once, but I know uranium exists. Now I'm not I'm not 100% sure I've never encountered uranium, but at some point I kind of have to trust that there's all this science about uranium, so I'm pretty sure uranium exists. When it comes to something like the moon landings, I can see why people want to think that something was faked. I think that one of the things that conspiracy theories kind of give you is they give you control over a very uncertain world. Because if someone's going to tell you what's really going on with so and so, then it kind of gives a little bit of purpose to this crappy life that you have. Like, in the
Right.
sense of, like, most people, they get up, they go to work, they work all day at a job they hate. They come home, they might watch a little TV, scroll TikTok or Instagram, eat dinner, go to bed, do it all again, right? But then when you go online and you go onto a conspiracy theory website or you see a conspiracy theory channel on YouTube, that opens you up to a whole new world.
It's sensational. Yeah, it makes you
And
feel things. Yeah.
why is Harry Potter so popular? Did you ever read Harry Potter?
I never did.
All right. Well, you're with Harry Potter. He's a kid magician, right?
Well, I mean, I know what it is about. Yes.
Yeah. So why was Harry Potter so popular with children? Well, children don't have any agency. Children don't even get to decide what goes into their mouth, right? They have to eat whatever their parents make them for dinner. But if you imagine that there's this whole secret world where you're a wizard in this secret world and you have all this power over the adults that the adults don't understand, that's a very powerful fantasy, especially for a child, especially for someone who has no agency. So if you're someone who is working every day at the job you hate, you come home, your life sucks, you don't have enough money to pay your bills, it is really easy to fall into that trap, that idea that there is another world out there, and this is, that fantasy world, that Harry Potter world, right? So when it comes to something like the moon landing, why were we going to the moon? Yeah, we're going there for exploration, right? And exploration is pretty darn important. But what's another reason we went to the moon? Well, we went to the moon because we were in a race with the Soviets. The Soviets were our biggest enemy, and we had to show the Soviets that we had superior technology to them. So if we actually hadn't landed on the moon, the Soviets would have provided proof, that we hadn't been on the moon. Because they were watching that moon landing like hawks. And they're going, oh, crap, they're actually on the moon. So there's that. There's also there's telemetry data. I'm sure someone picked up telemetry data. But also, if you take a look at things like the contractors that were involved in constructing the lunar lander, the ascent modules, all this other stuff, these were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who were involved in constructing the machinery that actually went to the moon. And sooner or later, someone's gonna go into a bar and talk.
Well, I think that's what I did not do any research on this, so I have no background. But what the gentleman I was talking to said was that one of the astronauts was interviewed on and there's video of this, he said, on it was like Ed McMahon or like one of those shows back then. And that he actually said, it was all in Hollywood. We did it. It was it was a set, and it's just, I think what it begs the question is, what is our level? Like, what are those things that we come back to that give us authority? What makes truth? What creates and defines truth for us? Do we believe the science, like you said, who built the lunar module or whatever, or is it a testimony of an astronaut that purportedly said it was all fake?
Well, that's what you got to do, right? You got to go through ICD 203. You got to go through that intelligence matrix. ICD 203, Intelligence Directive 203. Anybody can download it. It's a PDF available for free.
Okay, great. Yes.
It is the standard. I'm sorry. It's the standard that the intelligence community uses to measure probability that something's going to happen or that something has happened. So, what is the probability that the Soviets would, let's back up for a second. What is the probability that the Soviets could detect us going to the moon? Well, the Soviets had systems that could detect intercontinental ballistic missiles being launched. They had spy satellites. They probably had spies inside the NASA program. So the Soviets probably knew everything we were doing going to the moon. If we hadn't gone to the moon, they probably would have said something. So I would certainly say that the odds of the Soviet Union pointing it out if we didn't actually go to the moon is very likely, right?
And that ranks, and that has a higher rank.
When someone
than,
says, "Well, an
maybe,
astronaut went on
whatever.
Johnny Carson,"
like the gravity, the gravitas,
they did it all.
Yeah.
Well, which astronaut was it? Is there any footage of that? I'd like to take a look at it.
That's what it was.
Because Some, I mean, I've never heard of that.
I
So,
I
but
think he said there
that could be
was.
deceptive, right? Where you
Okay.
could
Yeah,
you could have a picture of an astronaut on Johnny Carson, and then overlaying that astronaut is text that said, on this date, Buzz Aldrin went on Johnny Carson and told Johnny Carson that the moon landing wasn't real. Now, people see that footage. They might even remember that episode of the Johnny Carson show where they remembered the astronaut was on the show. But this was kind of back before everyone had a DVR, right? And well, did he talk about that? I don't. And then maybe you might do a search. Oh yeah, Buzz Aldrin was on the Johnny Carson show in 1971, right? So that's kind of how stuff like that can perpetuate.
yeah, another lie hiding in a truth.
Mhm.
What about, let's just jump to this subject that seems to be very popular in some of the big podcast circuits.
Okay.
Aliens, UFOs. How do you slice all that up for yourself?
So one of the things that I did was a couple of months ago. Um, I there was a testimony of a guy, three guys in front of Congress who basically testified that alien artifacts were being worked on, and I actually don't remember the full context. This is like last year that I did this, but I actually used ICD 203 to kind of break it down and look at, like, all right, why do countries, or why do species colonize other species, right? Like, why do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And there's five reasons why, and like one of the reasons that comes off is well, resources is one thing, right? So you might go to another planet for resources. You might go for exploration. You might go for religion. You might go for defensive purposes. I can't seem to remember the fifth one. But
Was it research or studying?
yeah, well, scientific knowledge. I think one might be ego. Like,
Okay.
let's say there were two alien species and they're competing with each other just like the US and the Soviets did, and they found out there's earthlings over here. Well, I want to be the first species that goes to Earth. But when you look at the amount of resources that you need to do that, it's absolutely insane for such little benefit. Um, and I've actually said that there's probably a roughly even chance that we're not alone in the universe, but there's almost no chance that we've been visited by an alien life, because if we had be, we'd be dead. And I say that because if you've ever read the Three Body Problem series of novels, there's
Isn't that a Netflix show right now?
yeah,
I
it's a
haven't
Netflix
seen
show,
it, but
although it's not like the books at all.
really? Okay, so that's another good book to
Worth
read.
watching though. It's worth watching.
Okay.
Um, there's this thing, it's on Amazon Prime. They have the original Chinese one, which is like 45 episodes or something like that, which is more accurate to the books. But the Netflix show is worth watching. But the Three Body Problem, one of the books in the series is called The Dark Forest, and it kind of postulates that if we if there's kind of two horrors. The first horror is that we are alone in the universe. The second horror is that we aren't alone in the universe, because usually when someone tries to colonize somebody else, it doesn't work out well for the people being colonized. So my assumption, or my what I surmise, is that since technology can theoretically develop very fast, if an alien species ever encounters another alien species, you need to wipe them out, because they might wipe you out first, right? If you don't take that opportunity to wipe them out when they're at a lower stage of technology, they might come and colonize you one day. So I think any alien species that would have visited us would have killed us all, and they've had billions of years to do it.
Are you worried about the people who really believe they've seen or experienced something? And second question, you can either answer that, or what is the role of the government in allowing these stories to propagate?
We have freedom of speech. as long as you're not giving out classified information, you can say whatever you want. And that I did the video about that public appearance of like 3 guys in front of Congress.
Oh, I didn't see this one.
And
yeah, okay.
so I did a video about UFOs. I can send that to you after the show. But in this particular video, I just kind of go over every single reason of why we're probably haven't been visited by aliens. But this was an open, unclassified briefing. And if the U.S. military had any knowledge about aliens, it would probably be classified. So what these people were saying was unclassified data, right? Unclassified information. So if it was unclassified information, and if aliens exist, it most likely be classified, then the logical conclusion is, they certainly think they saw something, right? But they can't tell you the truth. It cannot be true because
I'm not smart enough to follow that train of thought. Like, so what is it?
Sure.
So what is it you're saying?
All right, so let's say that
Is the military wanting people to believe that something's going on for a distraction, or because they don't care? Like, it seems like there's just a lot of attention on this matter. And I think that's what's interesting to me. Not so much like, is it true or not? Are there aliens among us? Are they watching us coming up from the ocean? All those things. But like, first of all, mental health, like, are these people okay? Like, is this an okay way to kind of like live our day? And then secondly, like, where is the military in this, really? Like the U.S. military.
Well, maybe I didn't explain that correctly. So if aliens existed, or we had alien technology, then that technology would certainly be classified. It's secret, top secret classification. And in an open public forum, you can't say anything that's secret or top secret.
Okay, understood. Yes.
That's why you go into a SCIF, secure compartmentalized information facility. So the fact that these people were testifying in front of Congress in an unclassified environment is kind of proof that what they're saying isn't secret, right?
Okay.
So if aliens exist, we would make that secret.
Yes. Yes.
So if they're talking about it, then they either don't know what they're talking about or they're making stuff up. That can be those are the only two possible outcomes.
They don't know what they're talking about, or they're making stuff up.
Or they're making it up. Or they truly believe it. There are people who truly believe in various concepts. I mean, I believe I am a Christian, and that when I die, I will go to heaven. Right? I can't prove that, right? But that's what I believe. And there's other people who believe that they're Muslim, and on the day of judgment, you have to walk across a bridge over a lake of fire, and the bridge is wide enough. If you've done good deeds in life, your bridge is very wide, but if you've done evil deeds, your bridge is only the size of a thread. Well, I don't believe that, but they believe that. So who's right?
Yeah.
I certainly think I'm right, but I can't. We're dealing with unclassified information when it comes to aliens, and any evidence on aliens would certainly be classified. So these guys can't be right because they wouldn't be able to talk about it.
So maybe as we come back to like how can we know truth, and whether knowing the truth is important or not, whether it matters, this seems like kind of a benign issue. It's not hurting anyone believing in aliens or believing that I'm going to go to heaven. So it's not something that maybe. So it's like the truth that matters maybe is the truth that affects one another, each other. I'm asking. I'm trying to come to my own understanding of like, how can we know truth? Like, what's the pursuit all about? Yeah. It seems to me like you're not attacking people. You're not attacking people on social media who are like, believing in like that kind of thing, like being a Christian or whatever. But there actually are people, but they see it as a threat, not believing that truth. They don't want you to go to hell.
well, that's kind of a you problem,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, that's
Right,
like,
no, right. It's
you
all
know, like,
it's all like kind of like what truth is, how our flags of truth go up, our concerns
yeah.
about truth go up, about what we see as the ultimate. I'm trying to make sense of my world, Ryan. I don't actually
Yeah,
know the answers
I,
here,
I
but like it
you know,
seems
what's kind
like,
of funny is
yeah,
that it's kind of, arguing about religion is kind of like saying, well, my invisible man in the sky is way more important than your invisible man in the sky. Like, at this point, both of our invisible men in the sky are equally valuable, right? Or equally worthless. It's just what I happen to believe, and I can respect your views, and you can respect my views. Like, if there's, I would ultimately say that anybody who wants to get up in front of Congress and testify that they saw alien technology, ultimately, that they are harmless, because is there going to be any actionable information taken on that? Probably not.
yeah.
What's the actionable information you take away from it? Are we going to get any new kind of technologies? Are we going to have some kind of alien technology that cures cancer or something like that? If that existed, well, shoot, let's roll that thing out, start curing cancer.
For me, for my
Yeah,
life though,
that would be great, right?
I think it's important for me to know, like,
Mhm.
and I'm thankful to your, like, how you dice up what's true, because I don't want to give my attention to something that isn't maybe worth giving my attention to. I think
Yeah,
the information economy, or like, that's kind of the future. That's what is that our attention is what companies are going to be paying
wow.
for in the future. So if we're giving
I
all,
really like that term. That's a really good term,
I don't
information economy.
I don't know if I made it up or not. I probably didn't, but
I like it though.
I can
I'm
say
gonna
I made
start
it.
using that,
Yeah, it's
because when you think about it, like, we have a finite bandwidth for accepting data,
yeah.
right? And I think that's one of the reasons that, like, some traditional networks, some traditional TV networks are so scared, right? Because if you might have a TV show on, but you might also be browsing TikTok on your phone while the TV show is on. So what's getting your attention? It's probably not the TV show. There is a finite amount of bandwidth a person has to consume entertainment, right? So there might be a finite amount of things to worry about as well. You might want to start trimming those items to worry about down
Yeah, that's what I'm
until you can
working on.
actually,
That's
yeah,
why you're here for
worry
me.
about things.
Nuclear
Yeah,
war?
it's how
Ah,
you can worry about things that you can actually
yeah,
affect, or worry about things you can actually
and
change.
enjoy it. And I think, as it's been said, that like, as AI becomes more in charge of the workforce, we're going to have more free
Mhm.
time. So all of, like, it is going to be a fight for our attention. So like, even like, right? Like, I don't want to watch podcasts now that are about aliens anymore. Like, I have a few of them. And it was interesting,
Yeah,
and I learned and I expanded my mind, but ultimately I came to someone who is more like you, where I can, like, it connects with me better.
yeah.
It makes sense. And then it frees me up. I feel better about my world. Like, there is a feeling attached to it. I don't want to, like, be ruled by my feelings, of course, but it does give me more of a sense of peace, and like going back to like the locus of control, which is like just within me.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
oh, go ahead.
no, 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 please, please,
No,
please.
I wanted to hear this time.
I was gonna say, like, well, that's the question, right? Do you want to be the kind of woman whose emotions control your actions, or your actions control your emotions, right?
Yeah. Well,
Like, you're when someone spits on you, does it make you mad, or does it make you wet,
I want to be the
right?
kind of
Like,
woman whose spirit does. I want to have, like, that's an I don't know what that even means yet, but like, I want it to be driven by like a place of peace and love, for sure, and power. I want the power to be like there in a way where, like, it doesn't really matter what happens to me. I'm just going to go with what I know to be true.
as long as it's not emotional truth,
You
right?
don't like emotions. Emotions are wonderful.
Well,
I'm the daughter of a therapist, so I was raised to know emotions. Emotions are, I think,
that's it.
unhealthy when they're not known, not nurtured. We push out fear, we push out anger, we don't deal with it, then it's just going to bubble up and eat us, you know?
Maybe. I don't know. I've never. You say that I'm a deep thinker, and I've never really. I my I like this stuff. I like liquor. I like cigars. I like going running.
It doesn't have to be a certain level, or we are what we are. We're biological
No.
beings that I think can have a spiritual experience, but it can be just walking on the beach, smoking a stogie, if you call them those still, I don't know. Whatever it
I
is, this
I
could
mean,
be
I've
one.
had. I guess probably I felt spiritual in church back when I was younger, and I used to go to church. But I probably for me, probably one of the most amazing, maybe spiritual experiences I ever had was actually in training. I was in an armored vehicle, and that particular day I was the commander of this vehicle. And I look back, and the, I think I was the lead Vic, might have been second or third in line, and we were doing like a company movement. So we had God, like freaking 30 some gun truck, 30 some vehicles. And I look back, and it's just this ribbon of steel, behind me. I thought to myself, my God, this is the most beautiful sight in the world. Like all of this American firepower ready to stomp on the bad guys that would dare harm our country. And the clunk of a Humvee door, like an armored Humvee, one of the up armored Humvees, the M5. Oh my God, 577. I can't remember the darn name of the darn vehicle now. It's been a couple of years, but the clunk, that chunk that the door sounds when it closes, or that the engine. When I did convoys, when I was a weapons platoon sergeant, or a platoon sergeant in a weapons company, that those movements, that feeling of being inside of my gun truck, like that was my happy place.
Well,
That was
wow, yeah, it has
that was amazing.
like togetherness, right? It has like a community. It has
Yeah,
like
yeah, you're absolutely right. It's being with your men. Like at the time, it was all men. I know for me, being not just a soldier, but a soldier in a weapons company, anti-tank guy. Um, I think the beauty that I found in that was, what do they call it? Chi, or the kung fu. Kung fu just doesn't mean hiya karate. It means like the 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 ability of practicing something so much that you're really good at it. I think that's what it means, right? Like that's
okay.
kung fu.
Oh,
There's like a beauty to even pouring tea, right? That's what the Japanese believe. Like they'll practice
oh yeah.
pouring tea, right, until they're perfect at pouring tea. And or going on podcasts. I got to go on a podcast 10,000 times, be really good at it, right? And for me, like I was good at what I did. I was good, and I liked it. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoyed about my time in the military. It was just that I was really good at this one specific thing. And I look at stuff now, like I am an okay computer programmer. I don't think I'm a great programmer. I'm not an amazing programmer. I'm good, but I wasn't great. I'm a pretty good YouTuber. I'm not amazing at it. I'm pretty good. But darn it, I was a great weapons platoon sergeant. I really was. I was really good at that job, and I liked it. And I kind of and I told you the thing. I told you the story offline that I had been with the love of my life, and I had volunteered to do a mission, and she said, if you go outside the wire and do this mission, you're not coming home to me. And I had to choose between my two loves, and I chose the army. You know, and ever since then, I've never really.
What does the Army make you choose that same thing?
So when this particular mission happened, I was I was I was what's called QRF, Quick Reaction Force. So we were on this base and we were just like lifting weights, eating steak, lifting weights. I was jacked at the time. I was swole, right? But I hated it. Like I wanted to be back out on the road. And some of that was, I guess, my own, I don't say mental illness, but my own desire. Because there is, when you go from one forward operating base to another forward operating base and you didn't get killed that day, that's like you you lose today, better luck tomorrow, right? And I wanted to feel that again. And at that time, they were looking for volunteers to do these road missions, these convoys, and I volunteered. And I didn't have to volunteer. Sometimes the Army tells you to do it and you got to go do it. But at the time, I was like, I'm going to volunteer for this particular mission. I volunteered and I got the position and I did it. And I lost her over it. But it was
I don't know that.
it was
How
worth
can
it.
you come to that conclusion? Can we use your ICP 2024 to get there?
ICD 2,
Yeah.
3.
Well, like how do I like? Because Ryan, you have said this about your girl for
Mhm.
so many podcasts that I've seen, maybe 3 that
Yeah.
I've seen. You mentioned this, and so that's why I asked you about it offline. And we said we were going to maybe talk about it, but you brought it up.
Oh.
So why do you make this assessment? Are you using the tools that you use when you look at a social media video to arrive at the conclusion that you're arriving at?
Well, what was my conclusion?
That you lost her, that she gave you the choice and you lost her. Because I think I asked you offline, like, have you ever even Facebooked her, looked her up?
Once, many years ago, and I don't want to be that guy because like I don't tend to look back at things. Like I can't change that. I can't change what happened. And one good code, and this is for all the guys watching this podcast. If you ever come to a fork in the road, and one fork is the path of being kind of creepy, and the other path is not being creepy, take the non-creepy path. That's the better path to take. So,
Yeah, that's
I
true.
I can't do anything about that. So I just choose to walk the non-creepy path, right? And I have a pretty good life. Like, it's what? It's 10:45 where I am right now. And you know what I have to do tomorrow? I mean, I have to do some videos, but like I don't have to get up at 5:30 a.m. to work out and scarf down some breakfast and get in the car and go to work. I have a pretty good life. If I want, I can stay up drinking until 2 in the morning. I'll just do the rest of my work tomorrow. Not a big deal, right? So I think that even though I didn't take the path of choosing her, which would have resulted in the house with the white picket fence and the kids running around and the dog and the minivan. I think I'm doing okay because I have the marathons and the $2,000 triathlon bike and I'm going to go to Australia to give a conference on security. I'm doing okay.
Have you
You know?
have you ever walked on a path where it diverges, but then it comes back to the same path? I'm just saying because I just feel like that it's in my heart. Like if there's part of something in your heart that's like I still want to know her, what's going on. I don't think there's anything
No.
creepy in just picking up a phone or sending.
You know what's funny
a
is I'm
text.
laughing because
For
many
just because I feel like I just because I kind of care about people and their happiness. That's why I feel like I have to say that.
No, I don't. What's funny is
Okay,
years
fine.
ago, I met someone, and I never dated female soldiers, but I think, one of the I've never had trouble, like meeting people, like going to like I'm the kind of guy I can walk into a bar and I can walk out friends with everybody in that bar. And I visited Las Vegas and I met up with another podcast named Jake Bro. And Jake is kind of introverted, and I'm like not. So, I was in Burbank, California, and I realized, hey, I'm Southwest, $99. I can be in Las Vegas. I can meet up with Jake Bro, this other Ukraine podcaster. We can go out, have a couple of drinks, make some content. I can write the whole trip off, right? And so I flew there and I took him out. Oh my God, we had a friggin' blast. We had a great time, and like I walked up to a bunch of girls that were there. You know, they were like women my age, and they were in like a little circle. I was like, "Hey, come on over and drink with me and Jake. What's your name? What's your name?" And so like the rest of the, these girls were talking to us the rest of the night. And I think like kind of my deal is that like I'm not like looking to get you into bed with me. I'm looking to have fun. Right?
I'm very much like you in that way. I understand that. Yeah.
Looking to have fun, right? Like let's have fun tonight. So, one time it was before one of my last deployments, I was at an NCO school, I was at a sergeant school. And I met this woman, and we had a great freaking night. And then like I'm never gonna see you again, right? And our paths diverge, right? And then I was in Kuwait, and I was like walking to the Burger King on post, and I get in line, and I look at the woman's name tape. And I've seen that name before, and I said, "Are you?" And this woman turns around, she goes, "Hey, New Jersey." It was the same girl.
So you're a hopeless romantic, right?
I was in Iraq, and I was at where was I? I was at Spiker. No, it was a Spiker, Slayer. It was the transient camp that goes in and out of Iraq. It was Slayer. And I was like waiting I was waiting in line at the chow hall, and I'm like looking at my watch, like, when's this thing gonna open? There's a woman in front of me, and I look at the back of her hat. I'm like, I recognize that name tape. I'm like, hey, she goes, "Hey, New Jersey." She didn't remember my name, but like
New Jersey.
So yes, like our paths converged 3 freaking times, which was kind of weird. I'm thinking like, is she stalking me? It's the weirdest stalk ever, right? Like, but I'm finding her.
And that's it? Nothing on that one? Nothing happened?
It's
Well, I think this is interesting content for your YouTube and Substack audience. I think you should maybe play this up more, this angle yourself.
Yeah,
This
well,
creative-
they're definitely
creative
gonna like
side.
this part of the show. I'll promote this.
You have all the rights to it. I love it.
I that's always kind of been my thing, is that I am a very outgoing person, and like doing podcasts, like, or going on stage or talking. I love being like performing. It is exhausting. Like to be on and in character, even though I'm not in character in the sense of I'm the guy in the bathroom with the messed up hair. I'm not playing that character. But the guy in the bathroom with the messed up hair is still me. It's just me turned up to 11. Right now I'm at about a 7.
Yeah, there's intention behind it, and that takes a lot. Yeah. Can I? Oh no, go ahead. No, you don't. No.
I guess like it's kind of always been my thing, is that I so one of the things I realized why I was successful in the military is that I could run and everybody liked me. And I've always been that guy that like for some reason like people just like me. I don't know what the heck it is, but I don't know. Like that's always been my thing. I think it's actually one of the reasons I was a very poor leader. Because I did likership where everyone else is practicing leadership, right? And that only bit me a couple of times when I encountered like other NCOs, other sergeants, or even sometimes other soldiers who didn't like me. I don't know how to handle this. This guy doesn't like me. How do I fix this? Like I've never encountered this before. Like I didn't have any tools in my toolkit, to deal with that.
Well, you seem like you're liked now. You don't have that problem. Your fans love you. You have some cool fans.
It is weird. It is weird. Like I asked
you how like big you were, and you said like, do you go to a grocery store and get noticed? You said
yes.
Everywhere you go.
Yeah,
I've had friends like that when I lived in New York who like I would go out with them and they were like internet famous or whatever, or and they would get recognized, and I thought it was fun and cute, but like again, that's a lot of energy. Just having to give that.
It is, and like the I don't mind it. Like some people are like afraid. And I think when I had flown down to one podcast. A lot of times when it's part of my rider, because my agent has a rider. And if I go and I appear on a podcast, I have to fly business class. I have to be picked up identify a car at the airport. It doesn't have to be a limo; it has to be a car. So there's things that go in my rider. But and that's just the agency policy, which I believe me, I'm not. I fly Southwest, so if someone's going to fly me someplace business class, I'm going to take it, right? So I know one time I was sitting in, I think it was first class or business class, and this guy, like, he walks on the plane and he realizes it's me, and he's like, "Are you Ryan McBeth?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh my god, I love your work." But he's trying to get to his seat, right? Because we're boarding the plane, and so like the stewardesses, flight attendants, I guess you call them now, flight attendants, like, they're probably used to famous people being in first class. They didn't know who I was, but I'm not that famous that that a flight attendant's going to know me, right? I'm not Tom Cruise, right? So, but when the plane like leveled off to 10,000 feet, I used to ask the stewardess, "You mind if I get a coin? Because I have these challenge coins." If you look at my rack here, a challenge coin is it's like an attaboy that you give someone. It's less than a medal, but more than a pat on the back, right?
Okay. And you give these out
So
to people, or people give
yeah, I
them to
have
you?
Ryan McBeth challenge coins.
Okay.
And so when the plane kind of got to 10,000 feet, I asked, can I go in the overhead and grab a challenge coin for my bag? Because I travel with challenge coins. And I went into the back of the plane. I found my fan and I
Ah,
shook his hand and I thanked him. And I gave him a challenge coin. And, one of my things, and maybe this is one of the reasons that I'm liked so much, is that I've always believed that people will always remember how you made them feel.
they won't remember you. Like, yeah, well, it's that great quote, but that's good too. Yes.
Yeah.
They remember how
So,
much you care. They care how much you remember, whatever that is. Yeah.
yeah. So when, if somebody ever meets me, ask me for a selfie. Usually I just say, "Do you want a selfie?" Because usually guys are like too embarrassed. But like once I was at the theater. I think I went and saw the Barbie movie. Like, I left the theater. I saw Oppenheimer. I did the Barbenheimer thing. I saw
Oh,
Oppenheimer and Barbie the
funny.
same day. And I was coming out of Barbie. I think I was coming out of the bathroom, and a guy like touched me, which is, don't do that. But
Yeah.
like, that was kind of weird. That's when you go for your gun, right? The guy touched me, and he was like, "Are you Ryan McBeth?" I'm like, "Yeah." Well, he had like ran away from his family. Like, his family was, like 100 feet away at the other side of the theater, and they're looking at him like, "What are you doing?" And he's talking to me. I'm like, "Do you have to get back to your family?" He's like, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Do you want a selfie?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Took us because a lot of times they don't know what to do. Just ask for a selfie. We'll probably say yes. Don't touch people. That's kind of like that's kind of weird.
I think what's so interesting and important about you, I don't want to use the word interesting. I think what's important about you is that
Oh,
you that I know, right? I wasn't going anywhere else. That you can bring people together, that you let people in, that they're let into you. Like, it's disarming again. It's just, and we're all up in arms, literally, right, around the world with our social media positioning.
yeah.
And I think I hope you are famous. I hope you are on the couch of, Conan or whoever it is now. That's what he has a podcast, but like, hope you're on his podcast. I
Yeah,
hope
it's
he
supposed
finds you.
to.
You're on his podcast. You're going on already?
Yeah, I'm
Really?
supposed what was I supposed to? I'm supposed to go on some as a podcast of I think this guy, like, he goes on Joe Rogan, and I can't remember the guy's name, which is kind of sad. Was it David Collette, Ian? I don't remember the gentleman's name, but I'm supposed to go on this
Yeah.
famous comedian's
I think
podcast.
you're meant to be super famous. Like, in the sense of, like, I hope you are, because it's like I feel like what you did for me, right, with my
Yeah,
nuclear war
anxiety.
as a childhood thing, like, it's just it's I think the message that needs to be heard. Um and you're also a lot of fun. The last kind of question about random topics I really wanted to ask
Hmm.
you. I know you're not political, really neither am
Hmm.
I, but you are a patriot and you have military experience. How are you approaching? What is your thought process for how you're going to cast your vote this coming presidential election?
Boy, that's a good question. Um,
It's my
I
last one,
think,
so you better make it good.
yeah, I think I would probably vote for the person that would best handle our foreign policy. Which presidential candidate would make America stronger in the eyes of our foreign adversaries? Because domestic politics, it's not the hokey, it's not the hokey pokey. It's not what it's all about. Like we if you really want to affect change at the local level, you need to vote for your school board, you need to vote for your mayors, your local representatives, for your state government.
Yeah.
The president can't really do much domestically. He can sign executive orders and things like that, but we have a choice. We can either be the kind of America that is the example of what a democracy should be to the rest of the world, or we can be the kind of America that has a foreign policy of Calvin Ball, where the rules are made up and changed from play to play. And I think the kind of president who would display a strong, consistent foreign policy would be the person that I would tend to be more interested in voting for.
Follow-up question: can you just define strong? Because there's been moves that I think both potential candidates we have in the past have made that have been good and advantageous and disadvantaging to our country.
So when I think of strong, I think of Ronald Reagan or Harry Truman. I think of yeah, I'm serious. Like
Yeah, I mean,
Harry Truman said, yes, drop that nuclear
yeah.
bomb on Japan. Drop another one. They didn't surrender. That could be a lot of things, but there's one thing it was, and that was strong, right?
So
I'm not going to get
strong in the
get
military sense is what you mean.
yeah, strong in the sense of foreign policies. And I said that, like, and this could change in the next couple of months, but one of our problems is, like I said, it's Calvin Ball, where
Just
so
random.
all right, do you ever
Yeah,
watch,
is this
I'm
an
sorry,
army
do
thing?
you ever read the cartoon Calvin and Hobbes?
I've my brother did. Yeah.
So there was this cartoon called Calvin and Hobbes. It was about a child, I think an 8-year-old boy, and he had this stuffed tiger named Hobbes. And when parents weren't around, Hobbes was an actual tiger, and they would play games together. They'd build forts together. One of the games they played was something called Calvin Ball, and Calvin Ball was this sport where the rules are made up and changed from play to play. So the rules are constantly changing.
Got it.
Now, under Ronald Reagan, like, his rule was, if you do something stupid, we bomb the crap out of you. Now, that might not be the best foreign policy, but it was consistent. When Iran was threatening tankers in the Arabian Gulf, we reflagged Kuwaiti tankers with an American flag, and we escorted those tankers through the Gulf. And I think when just recently, the Eisenhower Battle Group, I believe they left the Red Sea, or they I don't know how much I should talk about that, but that we've removed
Classified.
some of our we removed some of our some of our naval forces from the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, Bab el-Mandab Strait, which is what the Houthis are firing missiles at freighters going through those straits. So the question is, did we win? Right? Like, we farmed a lot of XP learning how to shoot down Houthi missiles that were attacking freighters. And then it seems like a lot of our naval forces have left the Red Sea. They've left the Gulf of Aqaba. So does that mean the Houthis won? Does that mean that we don't need to escort ships transiting that strait anymore, because so many of them are going around the Horn of Africa, so we don't really need them anymore? Let's bring them back, conduct maintenance, rearm, refuel. Now, I can tell you that one option, and it's the option that we chose, was, all right, we're going to shoot down missiles. We're going to play defense. We're going to shoot down missiles that the Houthis are firing. Now, what option would a Ronald Reagan or Harry Truman have chosen? Well, Ronald Reagan or Harry Truman might have said, let's just sink the entire Iranian Navy. We're going to send a message. Right? That might not be the best policy. And, one of the things I mentioned before, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, that Iran essentially has two different militaries. They have the IRGC, the religious military, and they have the Artesh, which is their non-religious army. I mean, they're still religious, but they're not fanatics like the IRGC is. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. So what would be sad about sinking the majority of the Iranian Navy is that a lot of Iranians would die, particularly ones who aren't crazy about their government. They just happen to serve in the Iranian Navy, right? That's not something I want. I have a lot of Iranian fans, and I love every single one of them. But that would send a message to Iran that, look, if you use your proxies to attack international shipping, we're going to give you kinetic consequences that you might not want to handle. So that's kind of the position of strength. I'm not saying overthrow any governments. I'm not saying start any new wars. I'm saying, you know what? You want to do this, you tell your proxies to stop, or the next thing we target is your refineries. What would Ronald Reagan have done? Or what would Harry Truman have done? Right? So if you kind of go with that, that's the position of strength. And right now I don't necessarily see that. Right now we have Calvin Ball, where the rules are kind of being made up. We support Israel, but just today, what I found out was that we're not going to ship some weapons to Israel because we don't want Israel to go into Rafah and finish the fight, because while they're finishing the fight, a lot of civilians are going to get killed. A lot. So that's kind of Calvin Ball. What's our rules right now? Are we supporting Israel? Are we not supporting Israel? Are we supporting them with conditions?
Who's making
rules
the
are made up.
decisions?
Play to play.
Is it really the commander-in-chief?
Well, I mean, President Biden is the commander-in-chief.
Is he really making all the decisions?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I would not question his decisions. He is the commander-in-chief, and even as Ryan McBeth, independent contractor. If I get a government contract, I'm going to give him the best possible. Kind of just imagine me briefing the president. Can I smoke in here, Mr. President?
Could be a good video. I think that's a new series you can do.
That would be, Mr. President. You need some better liquor than this stuff.
You could do
wild turkey. This isn't bourbon. Yeah, man, it's bourbon, man. Drink it. It's good for you. Yes, Mr. President. He is getting information from his advisors, from the military, and he is making the decision, and that is the decision that he's made. And that's, Roger, Mr. President. Now it's kind of the military's job to kind of carry those decisions out. So I think he is making the decisions with input from his advisors.
All right, thank you. That's the most politics I'm going to go right now. What else do you want to share with my listeners, your listeners, but our world?
About our world.
Do you want to share? It can be anything. It can be about. It
could be anything.
Your grandma.
There's one thing I'd want to share. It's that if you are looking to have purpose in your life and actually make a difference, consider the military as a possibility. The military kind of made me what I am today. The reason I'm in this house is that I have a VA loan, and that with the VA loan, I was able to get a house for no money down. The reason I have 3 degrees is that I got college through the military. And if you're kind of on the fence about serving your country, take a look at it, give it a shot, even if it's just the Coast Guard. And if you want to do your job every day, can't get any better than the Coast Guard. I spent 20 years as a heavy weapons anti-tank infantryman, never fired a live round at an enemy tank, not once. I wasn't in the initial invasion of Iraq, so never had a chance to actually fire a missile at a tank. But in the Coast Guard, you do your job every single day. If you're good with computers, look at the Space Force. If you're into logistics, or maybe if you want to fly, the Air Force has a huge problem with not having enough pilots. And one of the reasons is that we cut a lot of planes because we started to move a little more toward drones. So the feeder system of pilots into the Air Force kind of slowed down. And nowadays, heck, you join the Air Force, you become a pilot, do that for 8 years, get out, now you're working at Southwest or at United, and you're making pilot money. You can even stay in the reserves and still fly fighter planes or transports if that's what you want. If you want to have a lifetime brotherhood, look at the Marine Corps. If you actually genuinely, honest to God, want to see the world, like all those strange places, like, hey, I want to go to Taiwan, I want to go to the Philippines, I want to see exotic ports in Chile, join the Navy. Or if if you want to enjoy your weekends, join the Air Force. Right? Like one thing I would leave your listeners with is consider the military as an option, especially when it comes to kind of advancing your life.
Beautiful. I am so glad that you chose the military. It helped inform you and shape who you are. So thank you for coming on today and for all the color that you bring to our world.
Well, thank you very much, especially the color orange, which is my favorite color. And cheers to you for inviting me on. Budemo.
Budemo. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Do us a solid and smash that subscribe, share, and 5-star rating button or link for the show. That way, more people can elevate their mental wellness as they explore some of life's biggest, most important questions with remarkable and fascinating guests. Oxygen Plus powers this episode of We're Not Blowing Hot Air. Nice Guy Creative Services is our producer. Leslie Blennerhassett is designer. I'm Lauren Karlstrom, concepting and host. Arlene Applebaum is editor. Thank you, valued listener. Keep breathing easy so together we can color our world.